This podcast is a proud member of PodNation Media Network.
Live from the KIJU studios in beautiful Ogasawara, it's the Monster Island Film Vault, episode 111, The Return of Godzilla, featuring Neil Riebe and Andrew Wynja the Ninja. Hello, Kaiju Lovers, and welcome to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. I am your host, Monster Island's film curator, Nate Marchand. And yes, still with me is my intrepid producer, Jimmy from NASA. Yes, I know the rumors of you being a robot have started circulating again because of your new, going back to your old mic, I should say. Why you gots to be so salty, man? Jeez, calm the heck down, okay? I thought you were a happily married man. Go vent to your wife tonight when you go home. Jeez. Alrighty. We got a lot to get into today, which is why I have brought on not one, but two special guests for the latest episode of Godzilla Redux, our fun little sub-series on the Film Vault where we're going through all the Godzilla films. With me today is the founder of GFest Kaiju Writers Panel and Yongari's biggest fan, Neil Riebe.
Hi, Nathan. Thanks for bringing me back to the island.
Yeah, they gave you the squeaky chair, I see.
Yeah. Well, they gave me the economy class tickets when I flew down here.
Yeah, well, economy class. I mean, yes. Our old friend Chiro finally got a little airstrip added to the island to make travel a little bit easier. You know,
well, I think your trip over to South Korea, probably really broke the budget there. So the
probably, but as
slashes on you, like that's enough of that excess over there. Now you're using lawn chairs in your studio.
There you go. Sorry, I bumped the microphone, everybody. But yeah, well, and we won't talk about North Korea. I am a wanted man in North Korea. Learn the hard way. Sarcasm is illegal in North Korea. Yeah, I can't go back. But who wants to go back to North Korea? Nobody. Nobody. All right. And then also with us today, making only his second appearance on the show, one of my patrons, the unapologetic apologist for Heisei Toku, Andrew Wynja, Hiya! The Ninja.
Hello.
I gave you all that hype, and you respond with, hello. I am not Wynja. I am, in fact, an AI. Alexa, Wynja. I
mean, ninjas are stoic. They gotta be quiet, you know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Andrew Wynja, American Ninja. There you go. There you go, gentlemen. Now, I do want to really quick, before I ask you how you got here, I forgot to show this off before we went on the air when we were, just chatting for a little bit. But did you guys notice my new shirt?
Oh, yes. Very nice. And you got that trick from the lady herself.
Yes, just came in this week. Our friend Linda Jo Miller of King Kong Escapes fame surprised me with a new t-shirt.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was not expecting it. And yeah, I'm still trying to process the fact that she just in her infinite generosity sent it to me. I've been saying for a while that she is the kaiju fandom's new favorite grandma, and she said that was the first time she ever liked being called grandma. So, yeah, I'm hoping to have her on the show in some capacity again after I did that interview with her last summer. So, yeah. But Neil, you got flown on economy because apparently the board is still cutting my budget. They're still cutting corners here.
Fan. We don't have to splurge on this guy. I mean, I couldn't even get a bag of salty peanuts for crying out loud.
Oh, well.
I want my shirt collar just to pass for food here.
Yeah. Well, I will let you know. I did get you an invitation to the upcoming Kaiju Authors Fair here on the island.
Oh, appreciate it.
Yeah. So you might want to stick around for that. I hope you got some books on you.
I got right back here.
Oh, I see you came prepared.
All right. The latest one, right? I don't know if you got it on the video yet.
Hey, the shameless self-promotion is at the end of the episode, sir.
Hey, I'm a novelist. Anytime is the right time to shamelessly self-promote.
Read the room, sir. Wynja, how did you get here today?
I was able to convince Eric to borrow the Q-Rex again, just to bring me to the island. I know that it was a little bit, if you remember what happened last time, but it went fine. And Jimmy, of course, was also very like, I don't know about this, but it all went fine, and I ended up here fine. Waved bye, and the Q-Rex went back to Eric. So
it seems Mr. Myers has softened in his old age.
This T-Rex would be the Atomic Rex. The
Atomic Rex?
Atomic Rex? Don't you know Atomic Rex?
No.
But you're a fellow author. You haven't met Denian's Atomic Rex?
Oh, okay. I was like, is this some sort of obscure Toku movie I don't know about?
Yeah, I've heard of Atomic Rex.
Okay.
Based on that, your response, I'm assuming we came on a much safer one, not the radioactive one. Not near as it is. I mean,
yeah. Wrong generation, you geezer. Anyway. He's way older than he looks. Come on. I'm pretty sure his origin includes time displacement in some form. What do you mean don't give away your secrets? Okay, whatever, Jimmy. Dude, you're full of more crap than a toilet, all right? Just, jeez. Anyway, as I said, this is the next episode of Godzilla Redux, where I redo all of the podcast episodes from my previous podcast life talking about Godzilla, because my fans are like, are you going to do more Godzilla movies? And I'm like, I already did them. And they're like, we want you to do them again. I'm like, you know what? I will. So we have officially gotten to the Heisei series. Although if I want to be pedantic, this is technically a Showa movie. If we go strictly by timelines.
Yeah.
And but people who split hairs about this.
Yes.
I've seen them. I bet I've been, I had people split hairs.
Hey, I am at least acknowledging it. In terms of actual Japanese calendars, this is a Showa movie, but it was grandfathered into the Heisei series because the Heisei series
was 1989.
Yeah. Because the Heisei series is very fond of its continuity. Opinions anyway. We'll get into that because I'm going to start upsetting people. This is the season where I'm going to start upsetting people with my takes on Godzilla films. Even the Showa movies that people popularly disliked they're coming around on them. Meanwhile, you say anything bad about the Heisei movies, particularly the 90s movies, the torches and pitchforks come out. Which is why Wynja's going to be coming on for several of these episodes, because he's the unapologetic apologist for Heisei Tokusatsu.
Listen to this, listeners. I honestly would say a lot of the Heisei movies are better than a lot of the Showa movies.
Oh, wait, where is it? I got a new sound effect for that. Where is it? Oh, wait, well, so professional, right? We're going to get letters.
I would rather watch just anything else than just Godzilla's Revenge or Son of Godzilla or Raids Again. Just those are some of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even kidding.
Wow. Shots fired. You're breaking Neil's heart right now.
It doesn't bother me a bit. Okay. I'll fire off some questions out to Mr. Ninja there. So now,
Mr. Ninja, wow. Wynja, look at you. This is like the episode. This is like the episode of nicknames for you. What the heck? Your resume is just going to get longer.
Well, I'm trying to read his name without my glasses, so that's the best I can do.
Oh, what? Do we need to make large print name tags for you now?
Yes. As this hairline fades, so does his eyes. It all kind of goes to the package.
Oh, okay.
The only thing that's expanding is this right here. But anyway, so for you now, when you were a kid, like was those were your first Godzilla movies you saw in your formative years?
No, I didn't. Funny story, actually. I didn't really get into Godzilla until I was almost an adult. I was at least 16, 17.
Interesting.
When I started getting into it.
And here I thought I got into it a little bit late because I was like 12, 13 when I started getting into it.
Okay, so when you were 16, what was like the most current Godzilla movies at the time? Was it Heisei or Millennium or?
The way I saw them was actually through it was a TV channel that no longer exists, but it was called El Rey Network.
Mm-hmm.
How I actually discovered this was they reran a lot of Knight Rider, the original Knight Rider from the 80s, and I loved Knight Rider, and I started watching that, and then I would see they actually had advertisements for these Godzilla marathons they would do on like the 4th of July and Christmas and stuff like that. That's how I first saw a lot of the Japanese movies. So was through that marathon, and I saw at least like half of them. I saw like a good chunk of the Showa, Heisei, and Millennium movies. Not all of them though, but like half of them. The others I didn't see till a bit later when I started, seeing them through like streaming and stuff like that.
So you kind of had like when you're for you your first exposure to Godzilla, you had kind of a pretty broad spectrum, old, new, current, and
yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, I'm always kind of curious how like so for me, okay, I'm like 100 years old, so Showa Era, the first ones I saw, and of course, maybe you usually like the first ones you see.
Yes, Jimmy, you're the one guy here older than Neil. Maybe.
So that's like kind of curious. Like now you got all these subsequent generations of Godzilla fans that came, after me here. I'm kind of wondering, okay, what was your introduction to Godzilla? And so, like I said, it's interesting for you. So you basically were able to now to objectively as you could look at all the different eras of Godzilla and say, okay, this is the good one.
Yeah. Now, when
my opinion is based on being 5 years old, seeing a giant dinosaur, and in that case, it didn't matter which one it was, as long as whatever one I saw. It's kind of like when they say when some baby birds, the first person they see, they assume is their mother. So for me, it's like whichever first Godzilla movie I saw, like to me, that was the best one ever.
Neil, if you think Godzilla is your mama.
I'm trying to come up with an analogy here. It's kind of like
I'm just saying I can set up a counseling appointment with Reverend Mifune for after the show in case you need it.
Well, okay, bad analogy. I'll put myself up for that.
I know. I'm totally kidding.
I mean, technically, if you want to get technical with it, like the first time I ever heard of Godzilla at all was when I was probably like 8 or 9. When I would go to the doctor, and one of the doctors in their office, they had this book. I think it was one of the Trendmasters books, like Godzilla Saves America or something like that.
I don't think that wasn't Trendmasters. It was a different company, but it was published at the same time that the Trendmasters toys were going on.
Yeah. That I remember seeing and then being like, oh, this looks pretty cool. And then a few years later, when I was like 11 or 12, I want to say, I played a game at a friend's house called Godzilla Save the Earth, and I really, really liked it.
Yeah, the Pipeworks game, the second one.
Yeah. About the same time, my first ever Godzilla movie was the 98 Godzilla movie. I think I saw it on like TV. I think it was on TV. And then eventually saw the other movies through that TV network. That's kind of my whole journey with Godzilla, I would say.
Yeah. I will not be getting to Godzilla 98 this season, but it will not be skipped. I promise it will not be skipped. We will talk about it. We've talked about the cartoon, so we have to talk about the movie when we get there. But it is coming.
Okay, well, back on topic.
Yeah, I was just saying. Well, welcome. I was going to say, welcome to Godzilla's This Is Your Life.
These are your fans.
Yeah. There you go. So it's now time to get into one of those Heisei movies that Wynja loves defending so much. Although I'm gonna say right now, he's not going to get any pushback from me on this one. We're probably going to largely agree with this. Also, I want to preface, before we get into it, I want to preface this by telling everybody, we will be focusing primarily on the Japanese original for this, not Godzilla 1985, the American re-edit. That is getting its own episode, because it's significantly different enough that I think it necessitates its own episode. So we're not going to get too far into the weeds with the Americanized version. But don't worry, it will get covered too. So here we go. So, as I enjoy doing with this, we kind of already got there a bit. How did you two discover... Well, this one's complicated, I just realized. I'm going to say, how did you discover this movie? But as I'm sure is true, I think for all of us, we saw the Americanized version first. So I will accept that as for the initial discovery. But, how did you get to the Japanese one? Neil?
Oh, okay, me. All right, so so obviously, I saw Godzilla 85 first. I saw that in the theater. So that was the first Godzilla movie I actually did see in the theater.
So this must be very nostalgic for you.
Yeah, definitely very nostalgic. And I didn't get to see the Japanese version until there was this Chinese company that was releasing them in region free. And so I got a hold of that disc. And so I was able to see the Japanese version. So I was able to compare the two at last.
How long after 1985 was that?
I would say probably early 2000s when I finally saw, the Japanese version. And as soon as then Kraken release got theirs out there, I bought that right away.
That was 2016. Yeah.
Good 20 years, 20-year gap between the two.
Yeah. I'm going to save how I discovered the 85 version for when I get to that episode. But I was trying to remember if I did see this Japanese version in some capacity before the Kraken release, and I don't think I did. I do think the first time I saw it was the Kraken Blu-ray in 2016. So there you go. How about you, Wynja?
I want to say because I didn't even see the American cut at first.
Really?
I think I didn't see 84 like any of it at all until I had the Kraken Blu-ray, because I don't think they would show 84 or 85 on TV very, very much, probably because the rights thing. But yeah, I don't remember seeing it before the Blu-ray, the Kraken Blu-ray. So that was the first time I ever saw it.
Yeah. Which honestly seems to be a major, I think I'm getting the impression that's kind of a major turning point for a lot of people, was that Kraken Blu-ray. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that was the best Godzilla Blu-ray Kraken put out. I looked into upgrading to their Blu-rays because they put out some of the 70s Showa movies and some of the 60s ones too. But from what I was reading, they weren't that much different than the previous DVDs, so I didn't.
Yeah, plus they're long out of print now.
Yeah, there's that too. But when I was first looking into it, they were still in print. But as soon as I saw that they had Return of Godzilla, or they kind of marketed it as Godzilla 1984, I'm like, I'm jumping at that. I am jumping at that, and they are currently the only ones who have released that stateside. However, Criterion now owns at least the theatrical and I think and streaming rights for it. And I anticipate at some point, this is my prediction, they're going to do another Godzilla box set with all of the Heisei and Millennium movies. Now, if they really want to blow our minds, get the American version and throw it in there.
Yeah.
Like, I will forgive a lot of things from Criterion when it comes to that Showa set if they manage to pull that off.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting into all of that until we get to that episode. But yeah, it's a whole to do. It is a whole to do. But yeah, so just to get some preliminary stuff out of the way with this movie, I'm going to try to quickly go through. It will not be very detailed, but there was a lot of stuff because this was the first Godzilla movie in 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot happened in those 9 years. But just to let everybody know, so our cast in this one is Ken Tanaka as Goro Maki. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why they keep going back to this name. How many Goro? There are three Goro Makis in the Godzilla multiverse at this point.
And then you got the Goro Ibuki from Megalon, you know.
Yeah,
Goro is kind of like Paul from the Hammer horror films. It's no name for your character, you know.
Also, not to be confused with the Mortal Kombat Goro.
Yes, who was a four-armed dragon man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Keiju Kobayashi as Prime Minister Seiki Mitamura, who is probably my favorite character in this movie. And he's definitely the best actor. Because that's the thing. Everyone in here, there's some cameos from some Showa series actors in this, but most of this cast is a bunch of new people that we've not seen before. Like, this is as much a clean slate as you can get with this, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And then Yasuko Sawaguchi as Naoko Okamura, who actually, that was our young lady in this, and she actually won the Newcomer of the Year award for this movie. I think this was only the second film she'd ever been in, if I remember correctly. And then Yosuke Natsuki as Professor Makoto Hayashida. This role was originally supposed to be played by Akihiko Harada himself. Unfortunately, he died before they started production.
Yeah, I heard about that. That sucks.
Yeah. However, he did attend the press conference where Toho officially announced that they were making this movie in December of 1983. And he even wore the eye patch.
Yes, I've seen photos of that. I think he even had the lab coat and everything. He just completely.
Yeah, he went all in. And they were going to have him play this character. And I would have loved to have seen that, especially since when you watch the movie, he mentions that his parents died during the events of Godzilla 54.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been a great callback. And I've already forgotten his name, Nosuke, right? That's what I said. Yeah. No. Natsuki. Yeah, Natsuki. Funny thing is he didn't know that they originally wanted Harada to play the part. And he said if he had known that, he would have turned it down. Because he's like, I can't. But he didn't find out until later.
Good thing too. I like him.
Yeah, I do appreciate him too. But here's the thing. Let's see how good of Godzilla nerds you guys are. This is not his first major role in a Godzilla movie.
Oh, crap. I don't think I know this.
You're talking about Yosuke Natsuki, right?
Yes, Natsuki.
Yeah, so it was Gita Three-Headed Monster was first.
He was Shindo, the detective.
Oh. Wow. I didn't even know that. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was that one plus in Dogura, which both came out the same year, and he played basically the same character.
Yeah, basically the same character. It's kind of funny. And yes, I've done episodes on both of those movies. Go, rummage through the back catalog of my episodes and you'll find them. Yep. And then rounding out our cast, we had Shin Takuma as Hiroshi Okamura, the brother, who is the sailor at the beginning. Kenpachiro Satsuma making his debut as Godzilla. God rest his soul, or should I say Godzilla rest his soul? I wanted the rib shot, Jimmy. Not sure, your jabber. There, thank you. You're losing your touch. We're still getting used to the new equipment. I'm sorry. And then Tetsuya Takeda as the homeless man. I'm just going to get into it with this guy because he is quite the character, to say the least.
Oh, I loved him. He is like one of my favorite characters in the whole movie.
Yeah, I'm trying. Let me see. Yeah, so yeah, he was a folk singer and comedian. And he was brought in by the director, Hashimoto, which we'll have to talk about him, because he wanted to lighten up the movie. I found conflicting reports about Koji Hashimoto. Some said he wanted the movie to be lighter, like a 60s movie, and other ones say he wanted it to be dark. Anyway, he brought this guy in to add a little bit of comic relief, and supposedly all of this man's dialogue was improvised.
Yeah, that's what I read.
I'm willing to believe it. He seems like, because like the things this guy says, that's one other thing. Again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds about it. I actually like the dub lines for this guy in Godzilla 85 because I'm like, he's just saying bat crap crazy stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But to let everybody, the other thing that's interesting about this is that it's a clean slate for the most part in terms of cast, but they did try to bring back some people who worked on the Showa movies. They actually offered the director's chair to Honda, and he said no. One, he was busy working with his best friend, a little guy named Kurosawa, specifically on Kagemusha on Ron.
That's what confused me, was that he won't direct this, but he'll direct Godzilla's Revenge.
Well, it's because he was busy, and he also he didn't really want to do most of the movies after, really the original, but he's like, it's work, so it's work, so I have to do it, but
yeah.
So that's another reason he's like, the series hasn't been what for him anyway, had creatively declined since the 60s. So he didn't really want to do it. They tried getting a Fukube to come back, and he's like, I don't make music for 80-meter tall monsters.
Yeah, Ifukube's whole thing, that was weird. I remember seeing articles of Ifukube being salty over just the weirdest things, the kind of music or style that the movie had or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Some sources said it was because I don't do music for 80-meter tall monsters. Others say he also did not like the quote unquote creative decline of the series. So yeah, so you had a bunch of the old timers who were like, So really, I think the only there was a few people behind the scenes who came back, like Teruyoshi Nakano, who said that he thought this was some of his finest work. And I could see why. I mean, he reused footage from Subversion of Japan because he also thought that was some of his finest work. I'm like, you know what? Yes. I'm not normally the biggest fan of stock footage, but for one thing, it was edited in nicely. It's a spectacular effect.
You don't even notice it's stock footage.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even realize it was stock footage until years later. And then I actually saw some version of Japan. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Which I've also done an episode on that. Go check that one out too. And then there were a couple of other people who were, who were friends with Nakano who came back for that, which we'll get into that as we go. So our director this time around, like I said, is Koji Hashimoto. He was a very novice director at this point. He'd worked as an assistant director on some of the Showa Godzilla movies, but he'd only ever directed one movie. And I know I'm going to keep saying this a lot. I've done an episode on this movie too. His only other movie was Sayonara Jupiter. Sayonara Jupiter is a weird little movie. Yes, I know you love it, but probably for all the wrong reasons. What?
I was saying, yeah, his resume goes all the way back to King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah, as an assistant director.
Yeah, so
so he had
his first Godzilla movie, and that was my first Godzilla movie, by the way. So,
well, there you go. You got something in common.
Yeah.
Hashimoto is interesting. I found a lot of kind of a little bit, like I said, some contradictory reports about him. He didn't expect to get this because Sayonara Jupiter was not considered a successful movie. I have discovered that that movie does have its fan base, but I would not count myself among them. I don't think I admire its ambition more than anything else. But Hashimoto, because he was kind of a novice, Tomoyuki Tanaka didn't exactly trust him. So he tried to push him around a little bit, from what I understood. And that's where we get the contradictory reports about whether or not he wanted the movie to be light or dark. Mm-hmm. Seems to depend on who you talk to. Most of the sources I saw said that he wanted it to be lighter and then got overridden by Tanaka. Yeah, and then I
honestly kind of like it like being sort of like a mix of sometimes a little bit dark, sometimes a little bit comedy, because sometimes you need that in a dark movie. You kind of need those like moments of like comedy to kind of, lighten up the mood a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
And
the opposite is true in comedies. You have to have dramatic relief.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And then our screenwriter, so it's not, our mainstay of Sekizawa. He is long done with the franchise at this point. But it was Shuichi Nagahara. However, there were a lot of people who tried to make this movie happen, which we will get into. So the movie was released December 15th, 1984 in Japan. It's 103 minutes long, which this starts the trend of Godzilla movies starting to get longer.
Yeah.
By, I would say, an average of about 10 to 20 minutes. Because the Showa movies average about 80 to 90 minutes. And these are going to start averaging 100.
The Showa movie should have been like 30 minutes shorter.
Wow. Holy. Oh my gosh.
Or you could be Godzilla's Revenge and you shouldn't even exist, but
that button is going to get so abused this season. Oh my word. Yeah.
Showa purists are going to hate me so much.
Heisei purists hate me. So it'll be fine. Oh my word. And then Neil's just like,
I don't get into the beast between Godzilla fans.
Yeah. Now, it should be noted, this was a successful movie. Not quite as successful as Toho wanted it to be, but it was successful. I'm trying to, find the actual numbers here. It's buried. It's buried down here in my notes.
Yen versus 2 is what they were hoping for.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Yeah, I think what they wanted was 2 billion yen. They got 1.7.
1.7 billion yen, which is about $6.2 million from what I was saying. It was in theaters for about 8 weeks. It sold 800,000 tickets in 234 theaters, I should say, in its first week. And should be noted, it was competing against a pair of not just American blockbusters, a pair of American juggernauts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Namely Ghostbusters. And apparently, if you pay attention to the movie, you could see the Ghostbusters logo while Godzilla's stomping through Tokyo. And Gremlins.
Yeah.
Okay. So Godzilla held his own pretty well, I would say. By the way, I would consider Ghostbusters for coverage on the podcast because the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is a kaiju. Fight me.
Yeah.
Anyway, it overall sold 3.2 million tickets, which actually made it the second highest grossing domestic film in Japan that year. And the most popular Godzilla film in nearly 20 years, because the last one that sold that many was Ebero Horror of the Deep, or Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, if you prefer. And that was 1966.
Yeah, then the director still resigned from directing anyway because he thought he was a failure.
Yeah, he thought that he honestly thought that it would have done better if they had made it quote unquote more entertaining.
I honestly agree.
What? You just said something negative about a Heisei movie? What?
Oh no, I thought you were talking about Ebera.
No, I'm talking about this movie because Hashimoto, the director, said like, "Oh, it would have done better if we made it more entertaining."
Okay. Because if you were saying Ebera, then I'd be like, oh yeah, I definitely agree on that.
Wow. I'm not hitting the air horn for that one.
And like John LeMay, in the same podcast.
Oh my gosh, that would just degrade into a fist fight, and then I'd have to have Jimmy handle it. You don't do that anymore? Okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah, it'll be the Jerry Springer show of the monster.
Oh, good Lord, no. Can we not and say we did? Anyway.
I mean, like, because that's a big part of Ebera is that, like, 80% of the movie, nothing happens.
Wow. Anyway.
It's literally just like, yeah. Anyways.
Anyway, let's talk about at least a bit of the...
Yeah, that's your new name.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of historical stuff to get into in terms of the filmmaking of it and the history. Because good Lord, this was Shin Godzilla before Shin Godzilla. Fight me, people. I'm sorry. It really was. So we're talking about whether or not this could have been more entertaining or whatnot. I am not going to get into like the things that happened in between Terror of Mechagodzilla and this movie, where Tanaka and other people were still trying to make Godzilla stuff. Could be an entire episode unto itself. It is absolutely insane, this era of the franchise. Because we say, Godzilla was dormant and on hiatus. Yes and no. It's kind of wild. So, first off, there were still things happening that kept Godzilla in the limelight. Admittedly, most of them were American productions, but they were still happening. This was the late 70s specifically. You'll know about this, Neil, because you lived through it. This was the era of the Marvel comic, which lasted for 2 years, 24 issues. I have read all of it. That was 77 to 79. And even more high profile than that, it was the time of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, which lasted for a little over a year and about 26 episodes, if I remember correctly. And I only just recently watched all of it.
Yeah, I gotta watch that at some point. I really wanted to see the Hanna-Barbera.
I'm going to tell you right now, one of the last episodes of the show, first off, the last 3 episodes of the show, there are either no monsters at all, or the monsters are not giant. It's crazy. But the penultimate episode, somebody needs to start suing somebody. Because, stop me if you've heard this one. Allow me this tangent, sir. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Evil terrorist organization headquartered on an island. They all wear blue uniforms. Their leader wears a mask, and his second in command is a vaguely Eastern European woman who wears black and eyeglasses.
Baroness? Cobra Commander?
and they have a snake logo, and their name is Cobra.
I've heard that before. That was you, of course. You kind of announced it behind the scenes before we went to the show.
Yeah. When I got to that episode, I'm like, what? Larry Hama, you owe royalties. You owe Hanna-Barbera so much money right now. For those who don't know, Larry Hama is the guy who came up with most of the initial mythology for G.I. Joe, a real American hero in the early 80s. So yeah, there's that. Elsewhere, you have some attempts to make American Godzilla films. So yes, the efforts went all the way back to the early 80s. And if you want to hear me talk more in more detail about this, go look for an episode I did on One Cross Radio talking about unmade Godzilla movies, or even better, go read John LeMay's books. Because he really gets into all the nitty gritty of this. But Steve Miner of Friday the 13th Part 3D fame, that is an actual title, tried to make an American film in 1983 called Godzilla King of the Monsters 3D. And it had a script by Fred Decker, who also wrote Night of the Creeps, Monster Squad, and unfortunately, RoboCop 3. And there was also the Shogun. You might remember this, Neil, the Shogun Warriors toy line that had an iconic but incredibly difficult to find anymore Godzilla figure, complete with a working tongue and a shooting fist. I have only ever seen an authentic one of these once. And one of them is, a couple of times. And one of them is housed at the Sekizawa Library here here on the island.
Almost like one of the first Godzilla toys, wasn't it?
Not one of the first, but it was one of the
earliest.
It's one of the earlier ones. There was a toy in the 60s, a model kit.
Yeah, by Aurora.
Yeah, Aurora. That's the one. Meanwhile, in Japan, both Toho and Henry G. Saperstein are trying to make more movies, and they would do. This was apparently an exploitation movie kind of move here. They would put titles into the press about new movies, and then nothing would ever come of them. And Tanaka convened. What I saw it called a couple of different things. He basically convened this big meeting on February 4th, 1978 to come up with ideas to revive the Godzilla series. It's like the Godzilla Revival Committee or something like that. I saw a couple different names for it. You want to know how desperate Tanaka was to make more Godzilla movies? Like, this guy did not want to stop. Like, Godzilla is such his baby. He even brought Yoshimitsu Banno on for this. The weirdo whose movie he hated so much, he still brought him in.
That's funny.
Tanaka is our unsung hero. I mean, you think that, all the attention that Honda got, he's got a book. Eiichi Tsuburaya, he's got a book. Kiryu Fukube, but no one, sings the praises of Tanaka as much. But the thing is, Tanaka was the one who wanted to keep making Godzilla movies. All those other people I mentioned, they got sick of Godzilla.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do Godzilla. Just to go long after, even when the public was no longer interested in Japan, he was still pumping a new one out there. Yep. We didn't have his dedication, and we wouldn't have all these wonderful movies and all these wonderful Bandai figures.
Everybody else
done more about him.
Everybody else was Mr. Taco. I am sick of Godzilla.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think people over here in the States sing his praises enough. I'm waiting for an Akira Takanaka, Tomoyuki Tanaka book. Because I tell you, we got a Shiro Honda down there, we got everyone else.
Quit admiring my library, okay?
Okay.
Yes, I keep all the research books here in the studio, all right? I need something to do.
I'm sorry. Every house that I go to, I start picking through the books.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Maybe I should be the guy who does the Tanaka book. I don't know.
Yeah, like I told you, man. I mean, you are like our latest scholar. I mean, you know,
I'm working on it.
I saw the show notes for our program. You're gonna love what's coming. So
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So yes, even Bono was there, which is just crazy. And there were a ton of unused scripts or unused ideas that came out of this. I am not going to get into all of them for the sake of time, but Shuichi Nagahara, what?
You got to mention at least one.
Yeah. I'll mention a few. There are a couple. Yeah, dude, you're getting ahead of me. All right, you're getting ahead of me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of me. Calm the heck down. This is my show. All right, so. I mentioned Shuichi Nagahara. I also saw him credited as Hideichi Nagahara. So for the sake of completeness, I'm going to bring this up. And I have to bring this up for my intrepid producer. Yes, I know. He wrote about the most important chapter of your life because this guy wrote The War in Space. Are you happy now? Are you happy now? I hope you're happy now.
I'm happy now.
Yes. So there you go. And yes, the Shakarus, the sea louse, came from The Bride of Godzilla? Question mark? From 1955. And Tanaka really wanted to get this made because he tried about 3 times. And one of them was another draft that came out of this meeting.
Well, yeah, like why would anybody accept this ridiculous script? Like, why?
It's a wild script. It's a wild script. There is a fan audio drama production of it that our friend Daniel DeMano was in. I highly recommend looking that up. I believe what was that podcast called? I can't even remember. Kaiju Zilla or something like that. I could be wrong. Put that in your notes, Jimmy. Yeah. And then this was also the same meeting where they got such notorious ideas. And again, go read John's books or listen to the One Cross Radio episode for more details. This is where you had Nobuhiko Obayashi, who directed the incredibly surreal horror movie House. He pitched an idea called a Space Godzilla, and it's not the Space Godzilla you're thinking of. This is probably one of the most cracked out Godzilla ideas I've ever heard. It's at least in the top 5.
The one where he turns into a spaceship?
No. It's the one where, and I'm not going to get into it. This is the one where he's a pregnant alien who dies of diabetes, and then his baby goes back to another planet and then overthrows a dictatorship with her dad.
Yeah, a lot of those stories were put into that manga, I think.
Yeah. Now that story was published in a couple of issues of Starlog, in case anyone wants to go find it. And then you had Akira Murao. This is noteworthy because there's like 3 different previous drafts of a Godzilla movie that had elements of their scripts dumped into this movie. But he wrote a script in 1980 called Godzilla Resurrected that featured everyone's favorite nearly non-existent kaiju ever, Bagin. Or Bagin, whichever pronunciation you prefer.
I feel so bad for that monster. Like, just how many times he's gotten rejected. It's like, come on, guys.
He's still on the island, and he's an a-hole.
Well, he did get an action figure, so.
And he was in Super Godzilla.
Yeah. Most recently, Godzibon, I think.
Yes.
Has him.
Because they really want to canonize this goober. So they figured, why not?
Bagin's awesome. I don't know why they just never.
They tried so many times, which as we go through the Heisei movies, we're going to get used to that name. It's going to come up a lot. Yeah. But at the time, Toho was doing things like they had a 21-day festival in August 1979 where they were releasing a bunch of their old G movies and tokusatsu films, and they were realizing, there's still a market, there's still an interest for this. There was a concert in August 5th, 1983, which was where they premiered a Fukabe's Symphonic Fantasia. It was called A Night of Special Effects Music. Very well attended. 10,000 fans made a coalition called the Godzilla Resurrection Company. Okay. And they got 40,000 signatures for a new movie to be made. But here's the ironic thing. You want to know what truly brought Godzilla back for us? The frickin' mouse. Disney, because Toho signed a deal with Disney in 1980 to license Disney's movies to be shown in Japan. And here's the funny thing. They would do that and they would release them in tandem with some of their old tokusatsu movies, and their movies, including Godzilla movies, were competitive with the Disney movies. So they're like, you know what? If Godzilla can hold his own against the mouse, I think we got something here.
Yeah.
So that's when on December 26, 1983, they had that press conference where they officially announced it with Harada present. And Tanaka's goal was to make it more modern, make it darker, because a lot of things that happened, like you were seeing older movies that were getting kind of reimagined and remade into, darker fare for modern audiences, like John Carpenter's The Thing and Alien, because these were being made for, as David Calla put it, paranoid adults. So that was why they wanted to go the route that they did with this one. Like I said, this interim period is an entire episode unto itself, and I don't know, maybe at some point I'll do something like that, but good Lord.
I mean, at least Tanaka, was just trying to push to keep the brand alive during that.
For sure. I mean, Tanaka produced most of Toho's movies for I think a good 50 years, all the way up to 1997.
Mm-hmm.
The last kaiju movie he produced was Rebirth of Mothra 2. Not how I would want to go out, but okay. Again, go listen to my episode on it. Yes, pseudo sister, fight me. Oh, and Donnie, you can fight me too. Between you and my pseudo sister, you might win. Anyway, so yeah, a lot was going on, but they detected an interest, so that's why they put this into production. And I do think they made the wise decision to do what Hollywood would try to do many, many times in about 20 years, and they're still trying to do it, and we're all sick of it, but they rebooted the franchise. But this movie is part reboot and part sequel. It's a little bit strange in that regard, because it's a reboot in that it ignores all of the movies from Raids Again to Terror, and it's a direct sequel to the 1954 movie.
Mm-hmm. That's how most of the Japanese reboots would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't until Shin Godzilla, in terms of the Japanese films, that we got a true reboot.
Yeah.
It had no connections to what came before. And yes, Shin Godzilla's coming. I don't think any of you are prepared for what I have in mind for that episode, but it's coming. So there's a lot to get into. And now I'm at least going to provide a little bit of historical context. Neil, I will be curious to hear your comments on this, because you remember way more of this than either one of us, because you lived through it. But this was one of the high points of the Cold War. And I would argue this is the only true Cold War Godzilla movie that we have. Some of the Showa movies at least kind of hinted at it, and some of Toho's other tokusatsu movies, to varying levels, would comment on the Cold War. But this is a true Cold War movie. And it's a unique, I would say, Cold War movie, because especially for non-Japanese audiences, because Westerners in particular are used to hearing about the Cold War from the American or the Soviet perspective, and this is the Japanese perspective, which is what makes it unique. So, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna do a quick kind of rundown on some of this historical stuff, because some of the Cold War stuff that gets hinted at this is kind of wild. For Tanaka, he viewed Godzilla, and this is a direct quote from David Callett, as, quote, the sacred beast of the apocalypse, because he wanted this to comment not only on this movie, to comment not only on Japan's place in the Cold War, but also on their increasing prosperity. One of the reasons they made Godzilla bigger is because there are a lot more skyscrapers now in Japan. And if they had kept Godzilla 50 meters, he would have looked really tiny. And one of the ideas is they wanted to show and this, I think this was always kind of present in Godzilla, especially in the 54 movie, but they wanted to bring it to the forefront again, about how quickly all of this prosperity, even kind of like, Western style prosperity, could be easily destroyed.
Right.
That it was fragile, which is, again, a very, very Japanese idea. In fact, Tanaka, again, I got this from David Callett, described the modern skyscrapers, that modern Tokyo cityscape, as, quote, vain symbols of these abundant days. And, and this was also at a time where, in that interim period, you had the 3 Mile Island disaster in 1979, which, let me double check that. That is actually considered to be the worst nuclear disaster in America. It's not the worst overall, because Chernobyl is a thing. Mm-hmm. And the Fukushima disaster is a thing. Just wait for the Shin Godzilla episode, people. But, the 3 Mile Island disaster, that was March 28th, 1979. It was in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, and which near Harrisburg. It had a rating of 5 on the 7-point International Nuclear Event Scale accident. So it's level 3. It's over 5 of 7. That's how bad it was. But I think, if I remember correctly, Chernobyl and Fukushima are level 7s.
Yeah.
So it's just wild. So that was in the news at the time, in that interim period. And then, also around the same time, Cold War tensions are ramping up because the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979. And then President Reagan responded by deploying nukes into West Germany. Mm-hmm. Yep. And what I think is the most significant one to our discussion today that we need is the the Strategic Defense Initiative, aka Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you kind of love it. Mm-hmm. So, really quick, because this could be an entire episode unto itself. This was a missile defense system that was going to use a combination of ground and space-based units, including orbital nuclear platforms. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah.
To protect against missiles. President Reagan announced it March 23rd, 1983, so 9 months before this movie gets announced. And he did that because he was an outspoken opponent of what was called MAD, or mutually assured destruction. That was the doctrine of the day.
Wow.
As long as we all have massive nuclear arsenals, no one's going to pull the trigger first. Yep. So he said that they were going to set this whole thing up. The media criticized it. Now, they started calling it Star Wars as a pejorative, referencing back to, the classic 1977 movie. And in this speech that Reagan gave, he announced, quote, "I call upon the scientific community who gave us nuclear weapons to turn their great talents." I should be doing this in a Reagan voice. To the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. And it was it's this as well as his Evil Empire speech, which was on March 8th, 1983 in Florida, that some argue ushered in the last major escalation in rhetoric in the Cold War, and some would say the end of the Cold War. So, a major part of this is the SBI, not the SDI, the SBI, the Space-Based Interceptor, which eventually evolved into... Who comes up with these names? Jimmy, you used to work for the government. Who comes up with these names? Neither confirm nor deny. All right, whatever. But it was this. So SBI eventually became, I'm not kidding you, the Brilliant Pebbles program. This was a non-nuclear system of satellite-based interceptors designed to use high-velocity, watermelon-sized, teardrop-shaped projectiles made of tungsten as kinetic warheads. It was conceived in November 1986, which is actually after this movie, by Lowell Wood at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, while John H. Nichols, director of the of that laboratory from 1988 to 1994, described the system as, quote, the crowning achievement of the Strategic Defense Initiative. And then it was canceled in 1994. So basically, they wanted to put satellites in orbit that they could use to launch projectiles at any missiles that got fired. Again, does this not sound familiar?
Yeah. Actually, well, technically, 2 or 3 Godzilla movies actually have this in common.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. The Soviet Union saw SDI not only as a threat to their physical security, but also as part of the U.S.'s effort to seize the strategic initiative and arms controls, basically to neutralize their military strategy. And they masked their concerns by saying space-based nuclear defenses would make nuclear war inevitable. In fact, in 1986, Carl Sagan, the famous scientist and sci-fi author, by the way, said he heard Soviet commentators say that SDI was equivalent to starting an economic war with the Soviet Union through a defensive arms race to cripple the Soviet economy with more military spending. And some also thought it served as a disguise for the U.S.'s desire for a first strike. Here's the thing. Some argue that that's how Reagan eventually won the Cold War. He scared the Soviet Union into overspending their military budget to come up with a countermeasure for something that they could never feasibly make. It's kind of hilarious. And then SDI ended in 1993 when President Clinton redirected its efforts toward theater ballistic missiles, not like movie theaters, but just like smaller theaters, war theaters, and renamed the agency the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, or the BMDO. So yeah, went all the way into the 90s, which is a good several years after the Cold War ended. The Soviet Union fell in 1989, and then the Cold War is considered to have ended officially with the destruction of the Berlin. No, it's the Berlin Wall. Is the Berlin Wall 1989? I think so. I'm getting my moments mixed up. Neil, you're going to have to help me out here.
Yeah,
it's 89 for the Berlin Wall and 91 for the Soviet Union?
You're right. It was
okay.
The late 80s.
Yeah. So it was a good couple years after that. Now,
there was perestroika going on in Poland. So yeah, the Warsaw Pact countries were just kind of breaking away from the Soviet Union. Yeah. Like a lot, it was like like the whole thing was just all this falling apart like a house of cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now the Soviets did have an equivalent to this that they called FOBS, which is the Fractional Orbital Bombardment System. And it actually went all the way back to the 60s because they wanted to figure out how to put missiles in low Earth orbit and then have them deorbit to do an attack. They were this was intended to utilize space for nuclear warhead delivery and bypass the U.S. detection systems, basically flying under the radar. It had no range limit. It would not reveal the target location. Again, does this not sound familiar? And it would allow for a path to North America over the South Pole to hit targets in the South, which was opposite from NORAD's early warning orientation. And The Soviet leadership most likely saw this as the ideal medium to deploy nukes. But here's the thing. That program got shut down relatively quickly by the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. There is an actual treaty that outlawed space warfare. I know, you're a little disappointed. But look it up. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967. It's a real thing. Just like there's also a treaty outlawing the use of weather as weapons.
Wait, weather as weapons? What? That's
Yeah.
actually possible.
Yeah, because they were trying to do cloud seeding and, and all the other fun things that we see in Son of Godzilla. Trying to control the weather.
I didn't think people could actually do that.
Apparently you need to listen to my podcast a little bit more because I talked about that in the Son of Godzilla episode.
Oh, I probably don't remember it because it's been a while.
Yeah. So despite this, U.S. leadership determined that a FOBS missile was technically not in orbit because it did not make a complete cycle around the Earth and therefore decided not to officially ban it. So yeah, there's a lot. That's just kind of like the general environment of the Cold War. And you also had like the Korean Airlines flight of 007. That was a big deal that was in the headlines at the time that also kind of escalated things for the Cold War. You also had the NATO Able Archer exercise. Like, this is one of the flashpoints. It truly is. This is one of the flashpoint eras of the Cold War. It's like that in the early 60s when you had the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I'm sure, Neil was probably, just graduated high school when that happened or something, but.
I think I applied for Social Security back then.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So where does Japan come in all of this? They're caught in the middle. Japan has long felt like that. And that really comes through in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of the reasons I absolutely adore this. I know there are fans who kind of overlook this one, or if they know about it, they don't have, they're kind of like indifferent to it. I'm like, guys, you don't realize just how fantastic this movie is, especially the Japanese cut. The American version undercuts so much stuff in this movie. It undercuts it so bad. If people thought King of the Monsters 56, hurt Godzilla 54, that's nothing compared to what Godzilla 1985 does to this movie.
Yeah. But that whole scene with them in the boardroom is a very impactful moment. It's done really, really well.
Yeah, which we will get to that. So even Nakano felt like, trying to do a nuclear allegory Godzilla wasn't going to work for a modern Japanese audience because he said they were peace blinded because they just, a lot of them didn't have to worry about it. But in fact, because of that, he was even like, let's go even more realistic and not even let Godzilla have an atomic breath. He got overruled for that. Thankfully.
Yeah, right. I mean, Godzilla's got to have his atomic breath.
Yeah, we saw what happened when they tried not doing it for Godzilla 98.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rifle and Godacheski even argued that Godzilla attacking Japan is because of their quote-unquote Faustian bargain with the atom because they had been increasing the number of... They didn't have nuclear weapons because they have the 3 non-nuclear principles where they said we're not going to make any, have any, and allow any into our country, which... The Americans kind of bent those on occasion. Sorry. But they had nuclear power plants.
Right.
So we're not going to have nukes, but we'll have nuclear power. And that's become an even more intense issue in the last 15 years. But again, Shin Godzilla's coming. So during the Cold War, Japan was caught between the superpowers, US and the USSR, and had few diplomatic choices. The U.S. saw Japan as a launchpad to contain communism in China and the Soviet Union and pressured them to take a more militaristic stance on the international scene, and Japan was not having any of that. And this anomalous status was economically beneficial for Japan. So again, This movie is also commenting on that, but it gave them very little strategic weight, which is why this movie is such a time capsule. Like, this is such a snapshot. Probably, I would say, with the possible exception of Godzilla 54, this is such a snapshot of Japan at that moment in time. Because an American attack from Japan would imperil the country despite it not having a lot of strategic value. And the interesting thing from some of the scholars I was looking at, this is not the first time we've had a movie that commented on this. I would say, yes, this is true, but it quickly gets dropped. But you could argue that a similar thing happens in the first Gamera movie. Because even though they don't I think this was Jason Barr who wrote this. He specifically acted like they specifically say, oh, it's Americans and Soviets, but they never really say in the movie, from what I remember. But there is what's presumably a Soviet plane with a nuclear payload that gets shot down by an American jet, and that's what wakes up Gamera. He also compares Japan's position in this to the original Mothra from 1961, although in that case it was Rolisica. And there was a critic named Chon Noriega in 1987 who had a very interesting statement about this movie. He said, quote, "The monster created by the bomb requires the bomb to kill the monster." So it's this weird circular logic. But here's the interesting thing. The ironic thing, as we'll get into, is Japan says no to both the Americans and the Soviets. And then they win the day through a quote unquote peaceful non-nuclear method. Ironic? It's interesting. It's interesting. But I would say, like I said, more than any other movie, like, we really see this. That's why I said, I think we can start getting into the movie proper here. But that's why, for me, the prime minister in this is by far the best character.
Oh, yeah.
Because you really see the pressure that he's under. And that actor was previously was in Submersion of Japan. So he's a high caliber actor. He knows what he's doing. And by far gives the best performance in this, because you really see that weight. And as much as people complain about Shin Godzilla being this nationalist, hyper militaristic movie, which it's not, it's like, do you guys forget that the same thing happened here? The Japanese, in fact, it's even, I would say it might even be more impactful here, because that's at the height of the Cold War. These are superpowers, and they're saying no to both of them.
Yeah.
Now, unlike in the American cut, they spend a day going over it, and then they say, no, we're going to solve this ourselves without you. And it's so incredible, because we're not used to seeing that perspective on the Cold War. That's why I love this movie. The politics in this is fascinating. I know it bores some people, but I love it. I've been talking a lot. What do you guys have to say?
Yeah, well, it is interesting how, that movie kind of positions both the United States and Russia as antagonists to Japan. Like, neither of you guys are my friends. And, I'm sure, they were, caught in the middle of that whole big poll of, well, whose friend you're going to be.
Well, and
Russia, is like right next door to Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, the difficulty that Japan finds itself in is that they're allies with the Americans. And they had been since the end of the war. And one of the reasons they even surrendered to America, this is a historical fact not all people talk about, it wasn't just because of the nukes. They were also scared of the Soviets, because the Soviets were going to invade. And they knew if the Soviets invaded them, it was not going to be good for them. They would have been turned into a Soviet vassal state, and it would have been ugly. Their culture would have been over. They knew the Americans were going to be far nicer.
Yeah.
So there's the nearness of it. They have a bit of history. And let me ask you guys this. We have our two ambassadors, one Soviet, one American. Interestingly, the American ambassador's name was Rosenberg, which sounds suspiciously German. And I would argue that the movie is still a bit nicer to the Americans in this. The Soviets seem a heck of a lot pushier. They abide by, unlike in the American re-edit, they abide by Japan's wishes, which, again, I'll get into that when I get to that episode. But they do still seem more insistent. No, we must nuke it. And part of it's because Godzilla wrecks one of their submarines, which just ramps up Cold War tensions. Yeah, and
they're afraid then that the next stop will be one of their naval bases.
Yeah.
And so that's why they want to, for the sake of their own national security, and they want to, nuke Godzilla. So, but yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. I mean, of course, those two ambassadors, I feel really were representative of the political zeitgeist back then. The Russians were aggressive. And then the Americans, as far as sticking next to principle, well, they'll be happy to throw away principle to get what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's be honest.
And so that kind of shows kind of the struggle Japan had to deal with. My takeaway is that the Japanese, if they had their way, they wouldn't have to deal with either of us if they could.
Yeah.
If they could, they would be independent of both of us.
Yeah.
And that's my takeaway of what they were trying to say in those scenes.
Yeah. I feel like
I think also Hashimoto's direction really shined because you notice when one of the ambassadors are talking, you got the ambassador in the background, but then you got the close up of the prime minister's ear when he has to sit and listen to this. Blah 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 blah. The other one again has to sit and listen to this blah 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 blah. It kind of showing, and then you kind of see the actor. You see his jaw kind of grinding, having to listen to these guys. Okay, this is what it's almost like the way the movie's kind of saying to the rest of the world. It's well, this is what we have to put up with. This is what we have to listen to. Yeah, and that really came off of it very very well. And one thing that's so interesting about this movie is that you kind of think all the Godzilla movies where Godzilla is the only monster, the stories tend to take what's kind of wrong with the social political situation of the times and force it into the foreground. You had the radiation exposure anxiety of the 50s got pushed to the foreground. And then with this one gets pushed to the foreground is of course the Cold War tensions that everyone has to kind of live under. And now you got this crisis that forces this, it's kind of like you got you think like today, we try to we got all these social problems that we kind of want to put our head in the sand about and just try to get on with our lives. And then Godzilla kind of comes along and forces the thing that we really don't want to look at out in the open because that's our weakness. That's our Achilles heel that Godzilla triggers. And so for that time period, it was the Cold War tensions that was the Achilles heel of that time being forced out there. Now we have to address the issue of okay, well, what if someone gets provoked to want now to start using nukes or going to some kind of military stance, and what do we do?
Yeah, like I said,
antagonizes those open wounds.
Yeah, like I said, no other Godzilla movie really addresses the Cold War directly. Now there are some other Toho movies that when I was making my notes, I was noting some of these things. I would say, and I don't know if you've seen this, Wynja. I'm guessing you may have seen this one, Neil. But the Toho movie that this reminded me the most of was The Last War.
Yeah, I think that one I only caught parts of that movie.
Okay,
it gets you to see the whole thing.
The Last War is interesting because it's almost like this movie is The Last War if they added Godzilla.
Yeah, I would concur.
Yeah, with that. Where in that one it takes place in a hypothetical, thankfully, future and it's not the Soviets and the Americans. They gave them different names, kind of like Rolisica in the original Mothra. But it's these stand-ins for the actual superpowers who are saber rattling at each other constantly. And, it's being shown from the Japanese perspective. Kira Takarada is in it. He's one of the stars. But spoiler warning, but this is why it's called The Last War. When you get to the end, nuclear war happens. But what's interesting is that in the build up to that, the movie will cut to some of the personnel who are running the nuclear arsenals for both of those superpowers, including the stand-in for the Soviets, and they have to desperately stop an accidental launch that nearly happens. And they go out of the way because we don't want to cause a nuclear war either. which is interesting because as Americans, we're used to thinking of the Soviets as just bad guys. When failing to realize they didn't want to pull the trigger first either.
Yeah.
That's why mutually assured destruction became the doctrine of the day. Neither one of us want to start it, but we want to pretend that we might start it. It was like this international game of chicken, which is why tensions were always so incredibly high. So in a lot of ways, that's what this feels like. It doesn't. Somebody brought their dog to work today at the studio. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. Jimmy, you need to soundproof this room. It's not in the budget. All right. Anyway. So I highly recommend The Last War for that reason. But it's interesting because it seems like you have to have an outsider's perspective to get that level of nuance, because it becomes very easy to just demonize the other side.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it later, but like I think probably aside from when the prime minister tells both of the ambassadors no, I would say probably his best scene is at the end where he weeps over the defeat of Godzilla, which is a very atypical response for how Americans would view that. But, we'll get to that as well. But it just seems like such a logical thing to do, to move Godzilla from the 50s where with commenting on American nuclear tests to the Cold War. Yeah, that's the way you continue the nuclear allegory in a modern setting. And there's no Godzilla movie like this. This is truly unique in the franchise. Any comments on that, Wynja? Because we still got a lot to get into.
I genuinely love this movie. It's definitely up there with, I would say, probably top 10 Godzilla movies. I can't remember. I think it's close to the top 10. But I really do enjoy this. I think the special effects are really fun to watch, and
I was gonna say like
the characters.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a good way to transition. Let's talk about the special effects in this. Nakano said, as I said before, this was some of his best work. I agree. This is some incredible. There's some incredible stuff in this.
Yeah,
they threw some money at this. Nakano gets to show off his fetish for blowing things up. Seriously, the man was Japanese Michael Bay. He just loved to blow things.
Yeah.
That was one of his frustrations back in the 70s, is that they never gave him enough money to really do any really decent effects. And that was one thing he was hoping, that one day he would get enough money to make a decent Godzilla movie. And thankfully it actually happened. He got a chance to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This movie, in terms of American dollars, it cost $6 million to make back in the mid 80s. And most of that was spent on the effects.
Yeah.
In fact, the Ihama nuclear power plant set alone cost 80 million yen, and the Shinjuku set cost 130 million yen.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Shinjuku set had 130 miniature buildings, and it took 2 months to complete all of it.
Which look incredible.
They do.
All the exterior of those, oh my God, like just like the real thing. I mean,
yeah, there were 200 light bulbs to illuminate all of these, the windows in the buildings and things like that. And this estimate says there's 150 million yen, but yeah. And although the miniatures are smaller, because Godzilla's bigger in this, they went from like a 1/25th scale to a 1/40th. Which some say it makes the miniatures less detailed, so they can get away with a lot.
Yeah.
But
from the inside, you're not going to be able to get as much detail in there. But you can spend more of that, trying to make the exterior look good. And, when it gets cut open, you can still have like little sort of details in there, but not like a lot, like the earlier movies would have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So...
With that much, can I ask you guys your opinions on the miniatures and the scaling? Because back when Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel reviewed Godzilla '85, one thing
I was going to say they're reviewing the US. They're reviewing the US version. I don't.
No, but hang on. This applies also to the Japanese version. One thing that they claimed was that there was inconsistency between the scaling between Godzilla and the miniature. Sometimes the buildings towered over him, sometimes they did not. And that was one of their big criticisms. And so, what did you feel that they kept the scaling consistent?
I'm pretty sure that those buildings are bigger than Godzilla. A lot had happened.
Yeah,
a lot had happened in 30 years. They made Godzilla bigger because there were bigger buildings now. It's not like in 1954 where they didn't have skyscrapers.
I mean, I love Roger Ebert. I really don't agree with his views on Godzilla movies. I mean, I don't think he even liked 54.
Actually he didn't. But weirdly enough, he liked Gamera Guardian of the Universe.
Yeah.
Although
strange.
He liked it for ironic reasons, which baffles me.
Yeah.
Although I think his cohort, Mr. Siskel, liked Q the Winged Serpent.
Huh.
I don't get it. That one I haven't done an episode on yet.
Yeah, that's that. I really said that kind of broke my heart to hear those two just utterly trash that movie as harshly as they did, and I felt some of those criticisms were just out of the ballpark.
Well, and I've brought this up before, but one of the most baffling things about how American audiences respond to Japanese films, and I don't want to go as far as to just blame it on racism. I want to make a good faith argument here and not just say that. But the fact that they will complain about how Japanese movies will use miniatures and suits to do these things, but then Rick Baker puts on a gorilla costume for King Kong 76 and it gets nominated for an Oscar for Best Special Effects. Actually, I think he got a special Oscar for it, if I remember correctly. I'm like, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, like Roger Ebert, I'm pretty sure he liked stuff made by Kurosawa and what was the other Studio Ghibli?
Oh, Miyazaki.
Miyazaki, yeah. I'm pretty sure he's gone on record saying that he liked films made by them. And those are Japanese films, Japanese filmmakers. So I don't know what his problem was with Godzilla.
I think this is the kind of culture back then. Kind of science fiction and horror and fantasy were not as socially acceptable back then. That was more kids stuff. So the Kurosawa films would be considered foreign films, therefore highbrow. Godzilla films are science fiction, and so they get
that
was the culture back then.
Yeah, it might be less a prejudice toward Japanese films and more just a prejudice against genre movies.
Like today, science fiction and horror and fantasy is just is so mainstream. You can find someone like a mainstream critic give a modern science fiction movie a good review. It's not easy to find that than it was back then. And of course, that was, like I said, that was this kind of way it was. So it's. But I just really want to see what you guys thought, compared to like.
I'm calling out Ebert on that. I think he's wrong about that. But the fact that they're paying attention to the scale and Godzilla is not bigger than every building. They clearly are speaking in ignorance there, I think, allows them to do some really interesting set pieces with this. Because like one of the best shots of the movie, which I think I read was actually a reference to a music album cover. And this is not in the American cut, is you see Godzilla reflected in the windows of one of the skyscrapers, and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And they did that practically. Like, remember, they did that practically and set it up so that you don't see the camera.
Yeah.
They didn't cheat with CGI with that. They did that on set. And then, honestly, one of my favorite moments in this is that total overkill moment where Godzilla's like, I'm gonna kill you with a building. He just pushes over. He pushes over an entire skyscraper just to crush the Super X. And I'm like, oh, dude. And then he just kind of stands there, and he's just like,
he drops the building, and they close. There's that slow close up on his face, and he's scowling at the camera.
Yeah, it's almost like he's this cat who is just like, yes, I killed it. Do you like it? It's just wild. Like, how many people could say that they had to throw an entire building at their enemy to defeat them?
I also like that he looks meaner in this movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
Compared to like the weird Cookie Monster thing that was going on with the Showa era.
Well, it depends on which movie, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the original 54 suit was really good. I loved that suit. But then it seems like after 54, the suit just kind of got stupider and stupider. As the movies went on.
Well, I would argue that that the stupidity peaked with Son of Godzilla. I do not like that suit.
Yeah.
That is the worst one.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then so it bottomed out there and then started going back up after that.
Yeah. The 70s ones don't look too bad. It's just that I really just like that they're back to let's just make him meaner and scarier again.
Yeah, they wanted Godzilla to be scary again. You know, it's like if you were just like binging through all these movies and you watch Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is still pretty dark. It's not dark TM as I used to say in my previous podcast life. I no longer hold that opinion because I love Terror of Mechagodzilla to death. But like you still even going from that to this, it's kind of tonal whiplash if you're just binging through all of them and you don't realize, oh wait, there was a 9-year gap and a lot happened. But the suit, since we're talking about the suit, this was designed. This is another one of the veterans who came back, Nobuyuki Yasamaru. And he had previously created Gorosaurus, Hedorah, and Gigan.
Oh, no wonder 84 is awesome. Because, I mean, he created Gigan.
Yeah,
I mean,
which was
like one of the most unique monsters in the whole franchise.
Yes, as I have discussed in both of my episodes for Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Yeah.
Which also played by Kenpachiro Satsuma and Hedorah as well. Like both, like the man, which is funny because he designed this suit for another guy.
Yeah.
For a guy named Hiroshi Yamawaki, who was a bigger dude than Satsuma. And I've met Satsuma. I'm taller than Satsuma, but Satsuma was built like a brick house. Like, I was shocked how built this man was. I'm like, I probably outweigh you by at least 30 pounds, but you could kill me. You could one punch me right now and I would be dead. But so we'll get to that. But he intentionally designed this to look more like the 54 suit.
Yeah.
He gave it ears, four toes, the fangs. Mm-hmm. And that's just some of the things that he brought back in this. And that's the suit. We'll have to talk about the Cybot. We'll get to the Cybot. It took 2 months to make this suit. And they had, casting the body part molds, making it with with urethane. It was crazy what they had to do to make this. It weighed 240 pounds. And like I said, this original suit actor backed out. They gave it to Satsuma, and Satsuma said this was absolute hell because the suit was not made for him. They said he could use it for about 10 minutes at a time. They had to cut holes in it so it could let the sweat drain out. He actually this was one of the few times he got hurt on set because some of the wiring broke and cut into his skin.
Oh, ouch.
It was not fun. The iconic suit that they started using in Biollante was built for him and was much easier to use. This way, no. The wiring cut into his leg and his thigh.
Yeah, well, kind of emphasize what you're saying about strong man Satsuma was, because it wasn't like the studio people figured that maybe it last maybe 2 minutes in that suit,
Yeah, they said, a normal person would last 2 minutes. He could go 10.
Yeah. It was like 240 pounds. Wasn't that heavier than the original Godzilla suit?
I believe so. I think this one holds the record for heaviest Godzilla suit.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Let me see. You know what? You guys keep talking. I'm gonna double check one of my books.
Okay. Mr. Ninja there. Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a first name.
What?
I said he has a first name.
Yeah, I know. I finally remember to use it. So,
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah.
Right, Andy.
We saw Godzilla. Now, for you, which of the versions did you see first? Godzilla, the Japanese version of Return of Godzilla, or Godzilla 85?
Oh, I saw 84 first because I got that.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, from what I remember, I got the Kraken Blu-ray first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't see the American cut until I got the VHS for it, like a couple years ago.
I can confirm. I can confirm this is the heaviest suit of the series.
Okay.
Yeah, assuming, and I don't think any of the Millennium suits got heavier than 240. I saw some variations of that. Some was like 242 or something like that, but around 240 pounds. I don't think any of the Millennium movies got that heavy.
Yeah. They were like more like what, 180?
Yeah, the lightest one that they had was 88 pounds, and that was for Godzilla versus Megalon.
Yeah, which I mean, you kind of needed that because it was Godzilla versus Megalon.
Yeah, yeah, he had to be. They needed that suit actor to be able to move around and do all kinds of silly things. Yeah. But yeah, it was absolutely insane what they were doing with that, and more power to Satsuma. Like that would, like, can you imagine, this guy got his start opposite Nakajima, playing some of his opponents, and then he's like, oh, hey, Satsuma, you want to be Godzilla? I get to be Godzilla. Yeah, and then it's like, yeah, here's 240 pounds of rubber and urethane. Have fun. And he's like, okay. He just does it. He lost weight doing it like most of these suit actors do. It's just, it's crazy. I have said this before. I'm going to say it again. Suit actors need more love. That's one of the things that just annoys me about people like your Roger Eberts who just dismiss this. And I'm like, do you realize how difficult it is to do this? It is incredible. It is beyond difficult. There are precious few people in the world who can do this.
I mean, it looks like it. I mean, it's funny because it looks like it's fun as hell. But then when you're actually like inside the thing, you're just like suffering internally.
Yeah, it's hot. It's stuff. You can't see what you're doing. You can't hear direction. You just gotta move forward the best you can. It's a nightmare. It's fun for us to watch.
Yeah. In fact, all Satsuma actually said in some of the books I was looking at, they said like all I had to do was fall over and I would have drowned.
Oh, when they were like when they had him in like the pools, and stuff, yeah.
And keep in mind the other interesting thing about this. I mean, first off, this movie's we're talking about how much like how similar this is to some past disaster movies. This movie's basically set up like a disaster movie where people are just preparing for Godzilla to come, and then wait him out like he's a storm. But the other thing that I think made this more difficult was Godzilla only appears at night, so they have to keep the lighting on those sets lower. So I'm like, that must have been even worse. First of all, so he can barely see out of it, and they're mostly filming in the dark.
Yeah, I mean the nuclear plant scene is great. It's a great.
Yep, and that was when we made it official, because people probably wonder, what does Godzilla eat?
Yeah.
Because there's the cut scene from 54 where he's supposed to eat a cow.
Yeah.
But then we never see Godzilla eat in any movie after that. Closest we see is like Rodan grabs a dolphin out of the water and destroy all monsters. But we've established what he eats radiation.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So this canonizes that, which again goes back to that Faustian bargain with nuclear power plants. So I don't know. You would think if not for the fact that he has a penchant for destroying cities, you'd think they'd be like, hey, can you go absorb some radiation for us? That'd be great. But, he has, there's also the fact that he attacks Soviet submarines and makes people angry.
Yeah.
People with more nuclear bombs. So,
But yeah, the city, is that it's Shinjuku, right?
Shinjuku, which is basically a district of Tokyo.
Yeah.
The bullet train sequence. That was also
Godzilla
really well
hates
done.
trains. If there's a running theme throughout the entire Godzilla franchise, besides anti-war and anti-nuclear, it's Godzilla hates trains.
Well, I got a theory. I think he's keeping up a King Kong tradition because King Kong was the first one to hammer on a train back in 1933. So he's just simply the grand old tradition. Giant monsters don't like trains.
Well, and the funny thing is that scene in King Kong 33 was not in the script. It was added by Marion C. Cooper because when they did the first cut of the movie, it came out to 13 reels. And there was a superstition back then where it's like, having 13 reels for your movie was bad luck. So he was like, my movie will not have 13 reels. So they just filmed this whole train attack sequence just to get one more reel. But then they ended up editing the movie down to 11 reels anyway. So,
but the bullet train scene, I was a little disappointed they didn't go full on into it and just recreate the 54 scene where he just like eats it and then throws it back down. He only like just picks it up and then throws it. That's like really all he does.
And he looks a little lazy while he does it too. He just like kind of like picks it up. Like when they're doing those really cool shots where they're green screening like what looks like a life-size replica of the train with the special effects footage. It looks like he's holding it right up to his face, but then when they do the wide shot of the suit, it looks like he's barely picked it up, and he's just like, meh.
Yeah.
I'm bored.
And it's cool to like, I remember watching some of the behind the scenes, and they just literally just roll the train, like with a guy. There's like a guy that just stands there and just like uses his hand to just roll it into the shot. It's not like remote controlled or anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and here's the thing. And this was one of the bits when I watched the Japanese version for the first time that really jumped out at me because this got cut. And there's this weird looking dude in the train. I thought he looked like a hippie, and they actually kind of like center on him in one of the shots. And I thought he looked like a hippie, but one of the sources that I looked at said that he's supposed to be a Christian priest.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Yeah, and it was played by a guy named Hiroshi Yamasatsu. I did not know any of this until I prepared for this episode. So he's supposed to be a Christian priest, and this is the Shinkansen bullet train, I might add. That is a big deal in Japan.
oh yeah,
Like
because
Japan is incredibly proud of the Shinkansen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of their examples of their technological prowess. All right,
because this I think beat Europe because they were kind of like in this like bullet train race.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I remember hearing something about it. But
yeah,
it was like mid to late 60s when they developed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was in the 60s. So what's weird about this guy is that while Godzilla is picking up this train, he's smiling.
Yeah, what was that about?
Well, the interpretation that I saw, admittedly this comes from IMDb, is that he's viewing Godzilla as quote unquote God. I was thinking maybe more like an instrument of God, but there's not enough context for us to really make that interpretation. But
so it's basically the aliens from one of the two alien races in the Godzilla Planet
Eater
anime. Yeah.
The anime trilogy.
It's basically like kind of like those essentially.
Yeah. Well, but here's an interesting thing I found out about Mr. Kamayatsu. His nickname was Monsieur. I guess he liked French. And he was a singer and a guitarist for a couple of Japanese rock bands. The names of these rock bands were apparently The Spiders and Vodka Collins.
Vodka Collins.
Which would explain why this guy looks a little weird.
Yeah.
He's a rock star. Now, it's not quite as weird And as I've already done an episode on this, but I'll probably do a follow-up because for the next Heisei movie, Godzilla vs. Biollante, that is weird as the TV host in Biollante. I'm like, who are you and why are you worshiping the devil? And no, this guy is just a weirdo who's like, Godzilla is here. The wrath of God has come upon us. I'm like, it's like all they were missing was to just let this guy start sermonizing about the end of the world or something in the middle of this. Godzilla's picking up the toys like, the beast of the apocalypse has come. The God's wrath, and I mean Godzilla's wrath is being poured upon us. And Godzilla just drops it. He's like, oh, shut up. And then just drops the train. Maybe that would have been a little too darkly funny for this and not quite fit the tone, but I kind of wish they had done that, where Godzilla just gets sick of this guy sermonizing. It just throws the train away.
Yeah. I also loved the scene where he gets like shot with the I forget what those are called, but it's something the Super X shoots.
Cadmium missiles.
Cadmium missiles, yeah.
Because cadmium is a compound that's used to neutralize radiation in nuclear power plants.
Yeah, but I love when he just like falls over and is like sleeping for a little bit, and then the
go home, Godzilla, you're drunk.
Just I love when just the sky turns red.
Oh,
missiles meet each other.
I absolutely love that scene.
They do it again, and I think Godzilla 2000.
It's not as good.
Red sky.
It's not as good.
Yeah,
it is not nearly as good. That is one of the eeriest scenes, one of the most apocalyptic looking scenes in any Godzilla movie. It is so evocative. It actually inspired a kaiju short story that I wrote and is now in my short story collection, The Worlds of Nathan Marchand. Now it's more like inspired by the mood of it than anything else, but those two missiles, the intercepting missiles, which, because going back to the whole Cold War thing, the Prime Minister basically enacts the security treaty with America and says, guys, help us. The interesting thing is they said that in the Japanese version, they said that the American counterattack missile is launched from Kadena Air Base. That's in Okinawa. Now, I was like, wait, is this thing nuclear? Because in the American cut, both of the missiles are nuclear. It's not nuclear in this. They do manage to spell that out. So it was a non-nuclear intercept. Because otherwise, I'm like, that kind of goes against the three non-nuclear principles here. Although the Americans did sneak some nukes into Okinawa in the 70s.
Yeah.
Go listen to my Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 74 episode for more on that. But so you have this. There is nothing I think. Wynja, I think what you're talking about from 2000 is probably the closest they've come to replicating that again. There's just nothing like it, especially with that music. Good Lord. That's another thing that doesn't get enough praise as the score for this movie, but we'll get to that. But man, and the sad thing is, you could argue that the Super X had won. As far as we know, the Super X won, and then the Cold War reared its ugly head and brought Godzilla back to life. Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets shot with a bolt of lightning.
Which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's like Deus Ex Gojira over here. It's just like, what the heck? I don't know why there's lightning bolts, but there are lightning bolts. It's probably the most fantastical thing in this movie, other than the military equipment. They went out there because I think they originally wanted to have nothing but just very grounded military equipment, but other people are like, no, we got to put the high tech stuff in there. That's why we got the Super X,
and that's also why we got the laser shooting.
The lasers, which are like maser cannons. Yeah.
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 Well, to kind of defend the whole lightning scene, you have to kind of visually, show the audience Godzilla absorbing the radiation, because radiation technically is invisible. So how are you gonna?
Yeah, but it almost feels like the gods themselves are reviving Godzilla.
and then it's probably that angle too,
Yeah, almost as if to say, sorry, you don't win. Not this time, anyway. Because we can't have a military solution actually win the day in a Japanese Godzilla film. Because we have to let the scientists figure it out.
Well, round two was pretty exciting with Godzilla and then Super X, and Godzilla blows a hole right through the skyscraper.
Yeah, and then shoves the skyscraper. And then shoves the skyscraper.
Like,
that is
another thing I thought was really interesting when they hit him with the masers. There's like this split-second pause before the explosion. If you ever watched that second round of fighting, and then I always thought that was always a kind of interesting touch, because you're anticipating something to happen, and you got that pause in there. It just seemed to get a little bit more impact between the explosion and the laser beams.
Yeah,
and then of course then you have the machine guns firing at the same time with the lasers. I mean, it was. Especially when you see that in the third theater first time back in 1985, that was a really decent hardcore battle between man and monster. Because remember, for you guys, Godzilla 85, 84 is kind of an older movie, but for me at the time, that was a brand new film, state of the art. It wasn't too far behind, say, an American special effects picture. So it was really, really impressive to see.
Yeah, I'm guessing you saw this movie in the theater to celebrate your second retirement from your third job or something.
Yeah. I guess full disclosure, I was actually 15 at the time, so I'm not as old as I passed myself off.
I know, but it's just too funny.
No, 16. I was 16, so yeah, I was a little bit older than that.
Yeah, it's just
in fact, I just got my driver's license at the time, so that was the first movie I drove myself to.
Of course it was. I would expect nothing less.
Yeah,
I would I want you. I hope you would. I hope you put that. I hope you put that on on like an application or something. It's like, why, young man, why do you want this driver's license? Because I'm gonna go see the new Godzilla movie.
Godzilla's coming to the theater. You gotta pass me.
Mom and Dad won't take me, so I have to drive myself.
Which is exactly the case too. They didn't take me to go see Godzilla versus Megalon was making the rounds back in '76. So that was the only ways. Get a driver's license and take myself there.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah. For a movie,
one more thing before we drop special effects. Let's also talk about the sound effects. Most of the sound effects they had were a whole new suite, and the footsteps. Boy, did that ever really.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Especially the scene when he goes to the nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Good Lord, they really built to that.
Boom. Yeah, it's like just amazing.
Yeah, and that was when we get our first full body shot of Godzilla in this, and the slow reveal with the security guard who stumbles on when the earth cracks because Godzilla is a walking natural disaster. And and then it pans up so we see just how big he is, and that they matted that suit in masterfully because it does not look like a guy in a suit. That looks like a giant. It was fan-freaking-tastic. And the fact that we're getting a POV shot, so it's like one of those horror movie cliches where you get a POV shot of the monster or the killer stalking his victim,
This is the first Godzilla movie, I think, where he truly feels massive. Like you get like the way everything sounds and feels. And like in the older movies before this, you didn't really, his like footsteps and stuff, they weren't as like bombastic or loud. Like his roars, they were more like, they weren't as bombastic. But with 84, like when he's like stomping through stuff, you're just hearing is just boom, boom, boom. It's just this loud, bombastic sound that you didn't really get in some of the older movies. So
and then you top it off that we got this after like a 50 minutes worth of like build up to this moment, and that sound was the big payoff.
Mhm.
You know, it's like it really justified all the worrying and anxiety that people were going through.
Yeah.
Over Godzilla.
And what did you guys think of our new Godzilla roar in this one?
Oh, it's amazing. I love it. It adds an extra like sort of edge to that original roar, where it kind of like it makes it a little bit more like growly, a little bit more like I'm not sure what exactly the term is for it, but
Bassy?
Bassy, yeah. You know, sounds more like a big, powerful monster, which I love.
It almost sounds. This is a weird thought that just came to my mind. It almost sounds like an engine. Like a jet engine, almost. I mean, like the original roar was made with a contrabass. There's almost not an artificialness to it. I don't know, but it sounds big for sure. And this is a variation of the roar I wish they had used more often. Because once the 54 and the 55, the original and Raids Again use basically the same roar, and that's very distinct. But then when you get to the 60s, all the way through the 70s, is basically the same thing. It's like a slight variation of it, and that basically became the icon. And then this one is going back to 54, but it also still sounds very distinct. But then they go back to a variation of the 60s and 70s roar after that.
Yeah, they do adjust it a little bit more in the Millennium movies too.
Yeah,
they kind of use that similar sound, but in kind of a different way.
Yeah, and I think this roar comes back once in Shin Godzilla, and ironically, it's when the coagulant is freezing him. I don't know why it comes back for that moment, but okay, it comes back for that moment. But I do miss this roar. But you are correct, Neil. This is a new batch of sound effects. The cinematography and the sound design in this, and I would say the soundtrack as well, is one of the things that makes this feel very 80s. Like if you're familiar with 80s cinema, this feels incredibly 80s. And I would say even Biollante, to a certain extent, feels very quote unquote modern. But forgive me, Wynja, it's when we get to the 90s and the cinematography gets a heck of a lot less interesting and feels more pedestrian and much less distinctive. But like these two, especially this one, it feels cinematic, which is interesting because they changed the aspect ratio for this. Gone is Toho Scope until we get to the Millennium movies, and I miss Toho Scope. I'm willing to let it go for this one because I really like this one and it still looks great.
I think that's a good reason why I like a lot of the movies from the 80s onwards, is because Godzilla feels and sounds, more big and mean and powerful, and you get a little bit of it in the 70s and 60s, but not much. And I think that's one of the many reasons why I enjoy like the stretch of movies from the 80s onwards so much. So
yeah, and a big part of that, it's not just the sound design and the suit, but we need to go back to talking about Satsuma, his performance. There's a reason why this guy is really honestly second only to Nakajima in terms of like one of the suit actors who defined who Godzilla is. And I actually read, and I think I'd known about this before, he was actually told by, I'm trying to remember, it was the assistant director, but he told him to actually model his performance after No Theater. I mean, he was already a martial artist, but then he went and studied No Theater, which is actually a traditional, it's kind of a dance. I need to do an entire Toku topic on No Theater because it's very influential on Tokusatsu.
Yeah.
And, because they wanted to get away from the anthropomorphisms. And I wouldn't even call Godzilla in this animalistic. He's almost ethereal. for as much as people rag on Shin Godzilla for just ignoring everything, and I've always countered that by saying it's because he doesn't care. Everything is so beneath him that unless you hurt him enough, he's going to ignore you.
Yeah.
And with this, Godzilla is not simply a mutated dinosaur, as we find out in a couple of movies. He is this otherworldly being at this point, which is what separates Japanese kaiju from other giant monsters.
Yeah, it's like that's kind of the issue with a lot of American monster movies, is that the monsters tend to be more vulnerable to the military. Americans don't really like their military being portrayed in like a more negative way and not in helpless. And with the Japanese movies, it's almost the complete opposite, where you can't even really make a scratch in the monsters with conventional weapons. You have to think more outside the box to defeat it.
Mm-hmm.
So
World War II, I think, really informed the opinions of the military. You look at how the battles played out between the American military when it fought the Japanese military. The way the American military was Godzilla, because the Japanese tanks couldn't scratch American tanks. Japanese airplanes were very ineffective against American airplanes. Their anti-aircraft guns couldn't reach our aircraft when they were bombing their cities. And so that's really why, I think it was very natural for the Japanese to see the military as being impotent, because their military was impotent. And for us, since we had so many military victories, we can't imagine our military being in that situation. We always think that, eventually our military will prevail, because it always has before. They have a harder time conceiving that.
It's some cultural differences. A big part of American identity is their military power, especially post World War II and the Cold War. Although, to be fair,
kind of the one outlier from that.
What?
1953 George Pal's War of the Worlds. That was one case of American
but that's part of the original novel, where the idea is that as advanced the technology as humans have, they do nothing to the Martians. The Martians are superior. And then the irony is that the Martians get killed by the common cold because they can't handle it. But humans are like, this is nothing.
They just forgot to get vaccinated.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that.
Here to save them.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
Okay, all right.
I mean, the beast from 20,000 Fathoms, like, that sort of has like a thing with it where the military they are able to hurt it, but they're not able to fully get rid of it because of the whole disease it has.
Yeah.
So it still kind of requires that sort of outside the box thinking, which I like.
Yeah. I was going to say, to be fair, not every, even in the 50s, not every American kaiju movie it comes down to the military shoots it enough until it dies. There are still points where they have to get outside help. The reason why they were able to kill the Rhedosaurus in Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, yes, they had a military sniper who did it, but he had to get an enhanced bullet from our scientist character in order to do that. And there are examples in Godzilla films where the military, yes, wins, but it's because they got help from scientists who said, here's a new MacGuffin that you can use. Here's the, what is it? Not lady killer. It's the from Monster Zero that the Zillions hate. The toy.
Oh yeah, that Lady Guard alarm.
The Lady Guard, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. You have banned those in your house. Your wife hates them.
Or you can get even more crazier and just have a black hole gun.
Oh, black hole gun, yeah. So it's the same sort of an idea.
Yeah.
And like, I think even in them, there's a scientist who's still telling the military how to do things, because they're like, you can't just go in guns blazing and think you're going to win.
Yeah.
So even he's trying to advise them, and to a certain extent, and certainly in the giant claw, the military could do nothing against Crazy Bernice, because Crazy Bernice just dissolves their bullets before it even gets to her. So they had to really think outside the box to deal with that. So yeah, it's not a blanket thing. I just want to say that it's more consistent in Japanese films where it's like, yeah, the military's not going to, a pure military solution is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Like, I think the closest in a Japanese movie, I think there's two instances, at least in Godzilla films, that you can point to where it's like, yeah, maybe, is Raids Again, but they're using the environment to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shooting the iceberg on top of Godzilla. So it's arguable. It's like, yeah, they're just exploiting the environment. And maybe Destroya, because it's technically the military who kills him and not Godzilla, which was not the original intention. They were going to have Destroya get wiped out by the radiation off of Godzilla's death. Mm-hmm. So you could arguably say that, admittedly, they're using high-tech weapons to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not Godzilla, it's another monster. I don't know. Those are really the only possible exceptions. But, you know, obviously Godzilla 98 is the go-to because it's just like, make him stand still and we shoot him enough.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm sure we could go on quite a bit about these effects because my word, they're really good. And they actually consulted with engineers to make the building so they can make them collapse more realistically. They consulted a geophysicist for Mount Mahara at the end to make sure that was accurate. And you want to talk about, my gosh, that Mount Mahara set.
Yeah.
Like, they go out of their way to make that volcano mouth look like it's a portal to hell.
Yeah.
It is kind of horrifying. But actually, I should bring this up. What do you guys think of the whole bird call thing? It's like a weird Achilles heel for Godzilla that exists only for one movie. And they never do it again. I don't understand why they never do it again.
It gives like sort of exposition as to why, you know, he goes to certain places. So, I mean, it's got to be there for that, but...
Yeah, I didn't care for that idea at all, but I agree with Andy there. Yeah, you have to have some kind of gimmick to make it work. I mean, as an idea, it's interesting because it is kind of referring to nature, and it does also make there's a kind of scientific basis where dinosaurs and where theropod dinosaurs and birds are, you know, genetically similar because, like, you know, like at that time, paleontologists are saying, yeah, actually, dinosaurs never went extinct. We call them birds now. Yeah, so they kind of use a little bit of modern. So they did incorporate some modern science, but then I was kind of thinking, on the other hand, okay, just because Godzilla here is a bird doesn't mean he's going to follow it. You know?
Yeah,
that was like the only kind of the
yeah. I will admit, narratively speaking, it's kind of interesting. This big, almost godlike, nigh unstoppable force of nature. You know, that is impervious to all weapons. You could probably nuke him and it wouldn't do anything. He can eat radiation. But then he's like, oh, shiny with birds.
Yeah.
So apparently Godzilla has very selective ADD.
Well, you know, yeah, it's like if they could maybe develop that idea a little bit more to explain why he maybe responds to a certain bird at a certain time, because because birds do, you know, they have their migratory cycles, and so if they can say, well, maybe
what was the weird translation? He thought it was like his magnetic center or something. I think it was so weird. I'm like, who did these subs? I love the subs on the Kraken Blu-ray. It's some of the best subs I have seen in a Godzilla movie because they're translating the on-screen text and they're styling it to look like the Japanese text. It's amazing subtitling work. But some of these translations, I'm just like, what? Let me look that up. Yeah, the magnetic area. And they're likening it, to the signals of migratory books. I mean, not books, birds. Migratory books? I'm on crack.
Well, we've been going for a while, so your brain's probably...
It's I've had quite a few couple of months. You probably heard about the Uber Mogura crash. Yeah, now it's not just Jimmy who inexplicably survived something and won't say how. Yeah, and to quote my intrepid producer, I don't want to talk about it. All right. But yes, so that was interesting. But something that we've kind of been dancing around, except for the Prime Minister, I do want to talk about the characters in this. I think you briefly mentioned them, Wynja, saying that you like them. This is very much an ensemble movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, other than the Prime Minister, none of these characters stand out too much.
Yeah.
From the whole thing, because this is.
I have a theory on that.
Oh, what's that? I want to hear it.
Okay, so anyway, of course, this is just purely, my takeaway from watching the movies. Like, after I watched the Japanese version a couple of times, I was kind of thinking, if someone were to ask me, well, who's the protagonist of this film? And I would say the protagonist is Japan. Because the way the characters are all set up, you got the entire spectrum of the whole social economic ladder. Like Okamura and Naoko, they're students trying to get their life started, so they're at the bottom. And you got Goro Maki, he's the working man with the rumpled shirt, the middle class. Hayashida's the upper middle class, who then has connections with the government. So you got all the rungs right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at them when Godzilla was knocked, subdued by the cadmium missiles, and you have the whole population was coming up to look at him. So you basically now Japan now is kind of like looking at this, their defeated foe. And again, it's kind of emphasizing, the country rather than an individual person.
Yeah,
I've heard that argument for Shin Godzilla as well, which is why I would still argue that the two movies that I think bear the best comparison to Shin Godzilla are 54 and this, especially this.
Yeah.
I feel like I know people really talk about 54 compared to Shin. I think you really got to compare these two.
Shin has some of that in it, but it kind of like does that whole main character is Japan thing and takes that to like 11, pretty much to the film's detriment, in my opinion. It's a pretty like interesting way of doing the movie.
Yeah, and I do think your assessment is accurate, and it also allows us to get different reactions to Godzilla in this. Hayashida is probably gets the most thematic weight, I would say, out of all of them, other than the Prime Minister. There's a lot, but the Prime Minister is dealing with a different set of thematic meat, whereas with Hayashida, he's making these kind of misanthropic statements about humanity and how, Godzilla's kind of a punishment for it. And, Godzilla is our hubris for dabbling in nuclear energy and things like that.
Yeah.
And he talks about unbalancing and how there's creatures like this throughout mythology. It reminds me a lot of Ultra Q. It was one of my newer notes when I was watching this, having seen Ultra Q, because that's a big theme of Ultra Q is unbalance.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and it was originally going to be called Unbalanced Zone.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah. And it's definitely indicative of its time. I do think people were feeling more pessimistic about things, because this is, again, another one of those heights of the Cold War. Now, I do think the end of the Cold War made everybody feel a heck of a lot better. And then, because then you get to the 90s, and the 90s feels remarkably indulgent, I think, historically speaking. We had this decade of fun, and then 9/11 happened, and then we're all like, oh.
Yeah.
So we had our rebellious phase, and then got kicked in the pants again. So.
Do you guys notice that there's a little bit of mirroring between Hayashida and Yamane from the first Godzilla film? Of course, they both are studying Godzilla, but they also have skeletons of prehistoric animals in their office.
They do.
I don't know if that was deliberate or supposed to be like a callback or something to the 54 movie, but I thought that was interesting. They got some small mirroring there. Of course, I could be reading more into this than I should be, but.
Oh, no, I would not be surprised if that was done on purpose. I mean, we had cameos from several past Godzilla actors in this. This is clearly made by people who know their Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had like Hiroshi Koizumi makes a cameo as one of the government officials. I think he was even the one who was popping the champagne cork to try to say, this is what we want to do with the volcano.
at Mount Mihara.
Yeah. So
basically doing what he did for a lot of those movies. He was being the scientist character.
Yeah, for sure. And so like I said, none of them really stand out all that much. We get an implicit love story between between Goromaki and the girl. And that whole setup, it feels like the 54 movie, where you have except instead of it being a lover, it's a brother who sees Godzilla and they have to cover things up and they don't want to tell anybody. And we have this very idealized journalist character with Goromaki. He's like, no, I want to put the truth out there. People should know, and the girl tags along as the movie goes on to help out to, figure out how to counter Godzilla. And, we get that, I would say, pretty effective and suspenseful sequence with the helicopter rescue while Godzilla is stomping through things. And although I'm going to tell you right now, doing a helicopter rescue like that would terrify me, because I'm like, the only thing keeping me from plummeting to my death is what looks like a life preserver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pee my pants now. Someone's gonna have a bad day down there.
The drunk hipster guy is the only one that gets the rest of them down.
Yeah, it's just it's something. It's something. But I will say, I think the human drama part of this, because it's an ensemble, you're not really focusing too much on any of these characters, but I don't think these are throwaway cookie cutter characters like I tend to get. I'm so tired of that argument now, even in the fandom, where they're just like, the human characters don't matter. No, they matter a lot. Yeah. They're just not making the merch out of them most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, look at what Godzilla -1 did. I mean, there's not a lot of Godzilla in that movie, but it's what carries it are the human characters.
Yeah.
The main reason why people complain about 2014 and the little screen time Godzilla has is because that movie has really boring human characters.
Yeah.
And I don't think people would really care if it actually did have good human characters.
Yeah.
It's just that it's more noticeable when it doesn't have good human characters.
Yeah.
And that it makes the movie drag. So
yeah, I don't think this is overall the greatest cast of characters in a Godzilla movie, but I
definitely think the later Heisei movies do have better human characters.
The introduction of Miki Sagusa did do a lot. I will say that. Although I have my opinions about Mickey, but I did say in the Biolante episode that she started off very well.
Yeah. It's just they don't utilize her as much as they should.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we have here I think is pretty serviceable. I would still say probably the best characters are Hayashida and the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
They have the most interesting things going on. Our young couple, it's a way to bring a little bit of a human element to what's going on here that's a little more down to earth, as Neil was talking about there.
And I think that's probably was the goal with those characters, was to keep it down to earth. Because if you kind of look back to the 70s films, the characters were very comic bookish.
Yeah.
And so
one of them was a comic book artist.
We're trying to contrast from the past.
Yeah. Well, and did you hear what I said? So one of them was literally a comic book artist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Although the Terror tried to veer away from that a little bit, except with the bad guys. The bad guys are very comic book. But the rest of our characters were much more grounded.
Yeah, I really like Terror. Like Terror is, apart from 54, Terror is probably like one of my favorite of the show era.
You and I are gonna get along because I love Terror.
Yeah, it's because it kind of had a better, I would say like a better character story compared to some of the other movies in there, just with how all the characters interact and just their backstories. And I think Terror did that really well. And I think it did it better than most of the other movies from that era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, interestingly, I had wondered a little bit about this because we have all of these Western actors playing Russians. And it seemed like they were, I mean, I have no way to comment because I'm by no means an expert in the Russian language, but it seemed like their performances were pretty good. They're all speaking Russian and there's Japanese subtitles. So when you watch the Kraken Blu-ray, it's like, again, it's like Shin Godzilla. It's like subtitle Inception. There's even again, this had to, Anno had to borrow from this movie. Like we would be introduced to government characters and they would just put their name up on the screen. and what department they were in. It's like, this is shit Godzilla. But yeah, we have the Russian characters speaking Russian. They have to subtitle it twice. And I was like, where'd they get these guys? You know, because one of a common thing to talk about with the Showa movies is they're like, oh, we need white people. Go find any white people. We don't care who they are. Go find white people. So you had these like lawyers who were moonlighting, you know, for bit roles in movies.
Oh
and
yeah,
weird
especially
stuff like
in like Showa era, and even in Heisei, and even into the Millennium era, whenever they get like Caucasian or like, you know, American actors, you can clearly tell that they're not actors just because of the way like they're
Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. That was really obvious in that one.
Yeah, for sure. But here's the thing. All of these actors who are playing our Russian characters, they're actually Spanish, Australian, English, and American.
Mhm.
And they had to bring in a Ukrainian-Russian dialogue coach to help them get their lines down.
Well, they did a good job. They passed the muster with me.
Yeah. Which, since we're talking about them, you know, because this is one of the biggest differences between the two versions. So we have our Russian fella who says, "Yep, we got orders. We're not launching the nuke." I still think, this movie, even though it's, you know, got criticisms of both sides, I think they still like the Americans a little more. Just saying. So it's like, nope, we're not going to launch it. Nope, we're done. Nope. And then Godzilla's attack triggers the countdown by accident. Our Russian fella tries to stop it. He flat out says, I need to stop it. This is bad. But then he gets electrocuted and isn't able to do it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Oh boy! Like are you talking about in contrast to the '85 film, or just in general?
If you want to bring up, I don't want to get too much into, because that's going to be a big discussion point, I think, for that. But
let's stay with the context of the '84 film. Now,
Yeah.
to me, that just simply meant that the Russians were pretty confident that that Japan and America were all going to be in agreement that we're going to go and destroy Godzilla on site on Japanese soil. So they were getting their equipment ready to go to follow through on the operation. So they were assuming that everyone was going to agree. They didn't expect the Japanese prime minister to, give them that much pushback.
Mm-hmm.
So that they probably already had that thing sent, during the negotiations, assuming this was all going to be pretty smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that, I guess, all right, they had a change of mind. So obviously they weren't trying to do anything, surreptitious. They thought through this, and plus for them being the port, they would have to have some kind of permission from Japan to dock there anyway.
Yeah.
So they probably thought that all this was going to work out, and then it didn't. And so they, so obviously they honored the agreement. As soon as the accident happened, one of their delegates got on the phone at the embassy. Hey, we got a problem.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they show Russia as being more aggressive, but not necessarily like evil.
Yeah, I'm going to get into it with the 85 episode because I do feel a little bit torn about that. On one hand, I do think this version's more realistic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the rah-rah sis boom bah American in me is just like, they'd launch the nuke anyway. But yeah, like I said, I'm a little torn. I forgot. I'm surprised Jimmy didn't bring this up. We need to go back to the Cybot because we didn't bring this up during our special effects discussion. The Cybot was a big deal in this.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I found varying estimates for how tall this thing was. I saw everything from 16 to 20 feet. The most common one I saw was 18 feet.
Yeah, looking at pictures, like because there's a guy that's like standing right next to it in a couple of photos I've seen, and it looks like it's probably about 18 feet, I would say.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want some nightmare fuel tonight, find pictures of this thing when it doesn't have any skin on it.
Yeah, I've seen those.
You're not gonna sleep for at least one night.
Well, I find an interesting coincidence that the 1976 Kong, they tried the same thing for King Kong, making this 20-foot tall mechanical Kong, but it looked horrible.
Yeah,
You know,
and just like and just like with the Kong, some people think that they did it because of Kong 76 trying it, and just like in that one, they only use it in a few shots. Although to their credit, they use it more in this movie than when the big animatronic in Kong 76. Mostly because
It's
the one in Kong
mostly
76 looked terrible.
It's mostly the facial animations.
The close-ups. And there were like, what was it? I think I read, was it 3,000 computerized parts?
Wow.
3,000. They said they were going to use it in 70% of the special effects, and no, they didn't. It ended up being more of a marketing ploy.
Secondary purposes for promotional, because I saw lots of pictures of it with the leading lady.
Well, yeah, they ended up using it more as a marketing ploy. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like the mechanical Kong from 1976 where that thing was pretty much a financial, you know.
Yeah, well, this thing was expensive. It was really expensive. And yeah, and sometimes especially when I saw the skinless one, I'm like, was this where they got the idea for Ghost Godzilla? Because seriously, they should have kept it around. It did like Ghost Godzilla, except it has no skin. There's how you make it horrifying. Godzilla was Lord Zed before Lord Zed. That's for you, for the listeners with attitude who might be listening to this. There you go. But yeah, it's okay. I see where they only use it in the close-ups, but the problem is that the face didn't look exactly like the suit, which makes it a little inconsistent. And that's been a thing. If they have to build a puppet for some of the close-up shots, nobody gets the memo to make the faces look alike.
Oh, I honestly think people will hate me for this, but like I honestly think the worst of it is in the original in 54. Just like it goes from like this really scary looking Godzilla to this really goofy looking Godzilla whenever they use the puppet, especially in close-ups.
Yeah. You're not the first one to point that out. So that's not quite as hot of a take as you think it is.
Well, they finally got that straightened out in Godzilla versus Biollante when they finally had the animatronic close-up head match the suit.
Yeah, when didn't need to be 18 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one, at least those still made it even into the American re-edit. We got to talk about what they cut. Because they made a life-size foot prop. Dang thing was 60 feet long. And they only use it in a couple of shots, mostly because it doesn't look all that impressive, which is why I find it ironic that Roger Corman, of all people, decided, you know what? We already think this movie is cheap and schlocky because we're stupid Americans, but even we don't like that foot prop. So we're going to cut it.
Well, it did have one. We saw it once in the 85 film.
No, it's not. It's not in there.
What's that?
It's not in there.
Sure, it was.
No, it's not. I did because when I watched the Japanese version, I was intentionally watching for it, and then it's only in like I think 2, maybe 3 shots, and every single one of them's like, yeah, I don't recognize that.
Yeah. There was only well, not unless misconstruing it, but remember that one scene where you got the populations running off into the background, and then in the foreground you see the bottom of his foot coming down. Was that same 60-foot foot, or is that it's when they're showing the foot coming down and crushing cars and people are running away in the foreground? Am I describing what I'm trying to tell you?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't think that's the foot prop.
Okay.
Well,
so
no, because that scene,
like they filmed the bottom of the suit.
I'm pretty sure that scene was in 85.
I think it was, but I don't think that was the foot prop.
That was also the big foot prop, but maybe that was actually the costume.
Well, I'll find out in a couple of episodes. So
okay,
I will.
Sorry,
I'll do
controversy over a foot.
I was going to say I will touch upon it later because I'm sure somebody on the island illegally, I might add, has probably tried to sell kaiju foot pics. Just saying. There are weirdos on the internet. A lot of them.
Yeah.
And the board will shut that down very, very quickly. I know a really good lawyer who would probably do it too. Those kaiju gave no consent for their feet to be put on the internet. You weirdos. If you need legal help, call the Monster Island Legal Action Team. Full disclosure, I'm friends with them. Anyway. Anyway, so yeah, obviously we had to talk about those, at least briefly. Because I admire the ambition of it. And as great as I think the effects are in this, even by like American standards, I would say, I do think there are points where they bite off more than they can chew. And I think that foot prop's one of them. Even the sea louse.
But at least, like you said, we're only talking about a couple of seconds of film time.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as bad as like the Heisei era, where sometimes you had some very, very bad effects having getting a lot of screen time.
Yeah. I mean, even the sea louse, like that got cut down. Again, Roger Corman looked at some of those sea louse shots and like, well, that looks terrible, so we're going to cut it down. I admire the ambition for that as well with the Chakras, but some of those shots don't look great. And even Roger Corman, of all people, decided, you know what? Some of these shots don't look good enough for us to keep. Does anyone else feel a little bit killed by that irony?
Yeah.
Not entirely, because Toei had that one movie called Legend of the Eight Samurai, and they had this giant centipede that came flying out, and it was kind of like animated the same way the Chakras was. So probably for the Japanese, that was probably considered acceptable state of the art, and the Chakras look better than Toei's centipedes. They probably thought they were doing fine since they're doing better than Toei with the monsters on a string.
Yeah, but that is the closest we get to a guest monster in this. This is otherwise a solo movie for Godzilla. And I'm sure in lesser hands, that Chakras would be the entire movie. It sucks enough blood out of Godzilla that it eventually turns gigantic, and then Godzilla has to fight it. Which would have been kind of amusing, because he's like, didn't I flick you off of me already? He just walks up to him and flicks him again.
How about when they're going through the boat and you had all the corpses?
Oh my gosh, like this starts like such a horror movie.
Yeah.
Such a horror movie. Like, you want to talk about setting a tone. I mean, like, we had the beginning where Godzilla bursts out of the mountain out in the water and attacks a boat, very much like the 54 movie. But then when we have, is it Goro? I think it's Goro. Yeah, it's Goro, where he finds the boat, is rummaging through it, and finds the corpse props look great, I might add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the best moments is when he's kind of like mid-ground, looking at one that's off in the distance, the corpses. So we're all kind of looking where he is, deep into the screen, the corpse on the floor, and then this hand comes down, real close up to the camera, right at you, like
Yeah, and they're actually
very nicely edited.
Yeah, and they're having the actor cover his face and nose, indicating that it smells horrible in there.
And then one of the people before they died vomited, and he fell, and his hand got in it.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really good attention to detail, and it's a level of horror that you don't typically see. Not only in a Godzilla movie, but kind of in kaiju movies in general. The horror is a very different style. It's almost a Lovecraftian kind of horror, where it's like the big scary thing is coming, and it's
then they got all that interesting lighting in there.
Yes,
to kind of add to it.
Yeah. Now, I will say, going back to the Chakras, a detail I didn't notice until my viewing for preparation for this episode is there's a harpoon bit still inside of it.
I saw that in your notes, and I was really paying attention to that, and I noticed then after reading your notes that one of the corpses laying on the ground has a broken pole, and I bet you that was, if you kind of connect the two together.
Yeah, so again, tremendous attention to detail. Man,
so there's like a little bit of a story going on with the prop.
Yeah, and to be honest, now that I think about it, I can only think of one other movie that did something like this, where we have a smaller creature that's attached to the big kaiju that that attacks our human characters on a human size scale, and that's Cloverfield.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was a similar sort of a thing there, and again, only for one scene. Although the results in that are even more horrifying because somebody pops like a balloon.
Yeah.
That didn't happen here. I'm surprised. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. One quick fact, our lead actress in this, when Goro is on his boat and he's listening to the radio, it's when he finds the other ship. That's actually her singing that song.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know about until I started researching. So she wasn't just an actress. She was a singer. Multi-talented.
This guy did the Phoebe Cates thing.
The what?
Remember Phoebe Cates from Gremlins?
Oh, yes.
The actress?
Yeah,
because she's done that with some of her first movies. She sang the title song as well as star in the film.
Yeah. Nice connection back to the fact that this was competing with Gremlins. But speaking of music, I want to make sure we talk about him. But Reijiro Koroku, the composer for this movie, you want to talk about somebody who is grossly underappreciated in the fandom. This whole soundtrack is unique and really stands out from everything. I get it. This guy, like almost every other composer who works on Godzilla, is in Ifukabe's shadow. To a lesser extent, they're in Masaru Sato's shadow. But I adore the score in this. It is evocative. It is eerie. It is scary. It's bombastic when it needs to. It still puts a little bit of that Ifukabe flavor in there. In fact, it's one of the few, I don't think it's the first, but it's one of the few Godzilla movies. It's the only Godzilla movie in the Heisei series that has no Ifukabe music in it.
Yeah. It didn't need it. Yeah, the music, it was like, no matter what tone it was doing, there always was a touch of melancholy to it, whether it's being gentle with the human characters or when it got to the big battle scenes when it starts booming, like particularly when you had the jets first come into Godzilla. So when you had that first military contact with Godzilla and the music and the jets, the sound of the jets all both kind of bam, all at the same time, da 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 da, and then the jets, and they got the rockets and the machine guns, and then and then of course Godzilla responds with his roar and the flame. That was
and Koroku
sound effects and music was very, very nice.
Yeah, and Koroku before this was known for doing anime, fantasy, and TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he said and I think this comes through in the music, especially when we get to the end. He didn't view Godzilla as evil, and in his mind when he was composing the music, he the way he interpreted Godzilla is that he's spending all this time wondering why the humans always want to kill him.
Yeah.
He used a lot of strings and brass instead of synthesizers. Because this is the 80s. This is the age of the synthesizer.
Yeah.
Because he thought acoustics better complemented Godzilla.
I think he's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thumps in the score's main theme, he intended that to be the quote unquote musical image for Godzilla's footsteps. Very Ifukabe, I would say.
I wish they would have retained him for Biollante, because that would have made a real nice, because Biollante really ties itself in tight with Godzilla 84 because they start out with
yes, but then we wouldn't have gotten BioWars.
Yeah.
I think it's a worthy trade.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the Biollante score, but I like the 84 score.
No, I get it. No, I get it. I agree with you. I agree with you. As much as I like BioWars, I do think that this score beats out Biollante. And interestingly, Koroku wrote this whole score in 4 days.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. Then again, I did read stories about Sekizawa cranking out scripts in a weekend. You're either really competent or incredibly incompetent. There is no middle ground. If you can work that fast. And I'm going with Koroku, I'm going with highly competent. But it's interesting, like I said, you get to the end, and as is typical in Godzilla films, but kind of in, like Japanese kaiju movies in general, the victory is bittersweet. Because you get to the end and people are like, yeah, we had to do this, but we wish we didn't have to, which is why the prime minister weeps. Because for the Japanese, Godzilla is a victim of the bomb, just like them. So the fact that they had to defeat a fellow victim of the bomb is, like I said, it's something they wish they didn't have to do. Because I'm sure that shot of the prime minister weeping would probably confuse a lot of non-Japanese audience members, because they're like, why?
Yeah.
He won. He should be celebrating. And if this was an American film, they would be celebrating.
Yeah, like in Godzilla 98.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, we got him. Yay.
Although Godzilla 98 tries to have its cake and eat it too, because it wants you to feel kind of sorry. Because they have this long drawn out death sequence and then everybody cheers.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we'll get to that later. But yeah, that and the music there, I think it really comes through. And then we'd be remiss, as much as I love the speech that we get in Godzilla 1985, the one thing I'll say the American version gets better is that speech from Raymond, not Raymond Martin. What am I talking about? From Raymond Burr.
Yeah.
As much as I love that, what we lose is this song. What is it called again? Is it Goodbye Godzilla? Is this? I think
like Sayonara Godzilla.
Sayonara Godzilla, and now I can't hear it without thinking of G-Fest. Because it's part of, oh, dang it, what is it called again? Stan Hyde does it.
With the Kaiju Confessions?
Kaiju Confessions, that's what it was. I was trying to remember what it was called. Because he always plays that at the end of Kaiju Confessions, because Kaiju Confessions for years has been basically the unofficial ending of G-Fest. Yeah, so every time I hear it, I can't think of that. And it's in English. And it's good English, too.
Yeah.
That is impressive. Yeah, that's hard to do, because I've heard a fair amount of Godzilla music where they have lyrics in English, and the English is a little dodgy sometimes. But this one actually works.
Yeah.
A few moments later.
I had to do a quick bit of digging, but it's called Godzilla Love Theme, and it was performed by the Stars Sisters. But like I said, I can't hear it without thinking of G-Fest ending. And I think at this point, especially if you've been to G-Fest and you've been to Kaiju Confessions, you could probably sing it. Goodbye now, Godzilla. Goodbye now, Godzilla.
Yeah, that's the part I always remember, because I haven't actually seen 84 in a bit. It's been a little bit, but I'm just picking up from what I remember the most from it. So,
and it's also the music that plays on the menu for the Blu-ray, because of course it is. If it wasn't already imprinted on your brain by watching the movie and going to Kaiju Confessions, the Blu-ray menu will certainly do it.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about this really quick, and then I think we can start closing up shop here.
Okay.
But also Nakano won the best special effects award for this movie.
Nice. Just
thought I'd let everybody know about that. Well deserved, I would say, even if his ambition got a little out of hand. But, and this I think is a good note to end on, because the next Godzilla Redux will be the highly re-edited American cut. There is, and we didn't have this until the Kraken Blu-ray, there is an international dub for this.
Yeah, I think that was the version I watched. Was the international dub.
Yep, which was commissioned by Toho, like they did with a lot of their, especially the 70s, 80s, and 90s movies. Well, and even into the 2000s, so really just for a long time. Actually, probably even before that. It's just that AIP is like, no, we're going to make our own dub, and it'll be better.
So the Heisei movies are kind of known for the bad quality of dubs, because they were Hong Kong dubs.
Yep, I was about to get to that.
Yeah, it was a company, and I noticed that when I was watching some other like Hong Kong like dubs, I recognized a lot of the voice actors voices that were in those Heisei Godzilla dubs, and because I noticed this when I saw the really famously bad dub for Transformers Headmasters.
Yes.
Transformers Headmasters anime. That was done by the same company, and you'll hear a lot of those same voices, and that's why I recognized them when I watched or when I saw some of that dub. So,
yeah, the international dub for this one was done by Matthew and Elizabeth Oram. Yeah, well, their company in Hong Kong. They didn't make any cuts, but the credits and other titles were rendered in English, and I found it actually listed out some of the voice actors who were in this. I don't know who any of these people are, but in case you wanted to know, a gentleman named John Culkin, like Macaulay Culkin, but John, was a news anchor, a radio announcer, and Goro. And Barry Haigh, Haigh, was the prime minister. And they even dubbed the Soviets, which I think New World Pictures did as well. They didn't dub the Soviets. They left that alone, but the international dub dubbed the Soviets. Go figure. Funny enough, the international dub was released on VHS in the UK by Carlton Home Entertainment, July 24th, 1998. So I guess if you had the British VHS, you could have heard this beforehand. But it took Kraken for us to actually get it in America.
I thought the dub was serviceable, but it's very dry because of the voice actors. They just don't carry the sense of urgency like the original actors.
Yeah.
And so I mean I get far more wrapped up in the movie while we're doing the subtitle version because the actors really, like I said, they really just suck you right in because they really give that palpable sense of emergency and anxiety and stress these people are under. Whereas the dub is almost like a very dry line reading of it just doesn't carry the day,
which is unfortunate.
Millennium era dubs is where they kind of get a little better, but yeah, the dubs in most of these movies have not been that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dubs, like I said, the dubs for these movies have never been that good, usually, especially the older movies. And
I think the worst one was probably GMK, but that's also due to a personal theory that I have. And again, when I get there, we'll talk about that one.
The Millennium movies, they do have some better dubs depending on the movie. Like the dub for 2000 is pretty.
Decent. but that was because the guys at Sony in America heard the international dub and they said, "Screw that."
Yeah.
We're not using that one. So that's kind of lost. That dub is kind of lost media at this point.
And the dubs for the Kiryu duology are also pretty decent, as well as Final Wars. I mean, Final Wars' dub is also pretty good.
Final Wars the dub is propped up by the fact that nobody can dub Don Fry without losing his voice.
Yeah.
The last guy who tried went hoarse forever. Who needs Chuck Norris when you have Don Fry?
Yeah.
Don Fry. And of course, I have to be nice to Don Fry because Captain Gordon is in charge of security around here on the island. There's a reason why we have Mako, our like science patrol team here on the island now. It's not just an Ultraman.
Yeah.
We got a science patrol now too. Anyway, I think that's as good a time as any to start wrapping things up. But first, we have to have a word from our sponsor. Sort of, kind of. It's the Culture Box. It's the Culture Box Network. This This week, from the Culture Box Network, we recommend checking out Geek Devotions. It's a collaboration of devoted geeks that are devoted to letting people know that they are loved. They produce a weekly geek culture-infused devotional. Their podcast, Com Talk, and written articles, all designed to encourage and challenge people in the geek community, bridging the gap between their faith and their geekdoms. Find all their content at geekdevotions.com. Alrighty, no listener feedback today, but why didn't you say something earlier about that, Jimmy? Yes, I know. I forgot to do a plot synopsis for this movie. I usually have the guests do it. I'm amazed they didn't say anything. I thought you guys were fans. I'm just saying. I get it. We're just going to assume people have already know enough about this movie. Whatever. Okay, I'm sorry. You'll do a better job in the future. I'm sure you will anyway. I think we've done our due diligence already as it is. Wouldn't you say? Nodding your head is great radio, Neil.
What?
I asked a question and you just sat there and nodded, and I'm like, sir, this is a radio show.
I didn't realize you asked me a question. Hey, old guys kind of nod off after a while, you know?
Neil, I know you're trying to enhance your creative powers, but lay off the weed. I just did. Especially since I'm going to need both of you to have plenty of energy for the Patreon shout-outs.
I shall ask thee once again, will you shout my name?
Starting at the Day Pass tourist, Eli Harris.
Redeemed Otaku.
Me!
Eric Anderson.
Edwin Gonzalez.
Jonathan Cartwright!
Leon Campbell.
Michael Watson.
Eric Pearl!
And next up at our Weekend Pass tourist, we have Matt Walsh, but not that Matt Walsh.
Devin Torrance.
Who I think is one of our latest patrons. Next up, we have the VIP Pass tourist with
Daniel DeMena!
Christopher Reiner, one of my co-hosts on Henshin Power V3.
Jake Hembrick.
My other co-host on Henshin Power V3.
The Cellcast!
And at the Season Pass tourist level, we have executive producer Damon Noyes.
Sam Allred.
Oh, I mean, let's be honest, Godzilla was definitely having some tofu fury in this movie. I mean, look at that face. Look at that face. That suit just screams tofu fury. They could have solved this whole problem. Just give Godzilla some tofu and he's going to be happy. You know, it's not quite those weirdo commercials that were airing in America for the 85 version, but again, we'll get to that in a few episodes. But speaking of upcoming episodes, next up, we're getting back to the Ultra Journey. So our main theme for season 5 of MIFV, looking at Ultraman movies, and we've looked at an animated movie, which was a standalone. We did a double feature with Ultraman Zerth, which were both standalone movies. Well, now we are getting to our first series tie-in movie, and except it kind of ties in with 2 series, so it's also a crossover movie. But we're going to be looking at Ultraman Tiga and Ultraman Dyna, Warriors of the Star of Light. And I am happy to report I have now finalized my guest for that episode. It will be friend of the podcast making his first appearance on, I think, is it any of my podcasts? I think it might be his first appearance on any of my podcasts, but Rob Buck of the Power Chamber podcast. I've been on that one several times. He is a fellow Hoosier to boot. So this is going to be fun. So, Ultraman is very adjacent to Power Rangers. In fact, Fox tried to use Ultraman Tiga as a replacement for Power Rangers because they're like, the mouse came a-calling, we're going to sell Power Rangers. Oops, that was a bad idea. At least for them. Maybe not for the franchise. I don't know. Listen to the Power Trip if you want to hear more about that. And then, it will not be a Godzilla Redux episode, but I will be getting back to Patreon episodes. So with our first Patreon sponsored episode of season 5 from Damon Noyes, our executive producer, it will be not technically kaiju, but arguably kaiju. You'll have to hear what Damon has to say about this, but it will actually be a dragon movie. And I do consider dragons to not be kaiju necessarily, but kaiju adjacent. But we're going to be looking at 1982's Dragon Slayer. And yes, it has, as is a theme with most of Damon's appearances, it has a puppet, namely a Go Motion puppet, courtesy of Phil Tippett. So, got a lot to look forward to in the next couple of episodes. You guys ever seen Dragon Slayer?
Oh, once. I think it was on Comet. Oh, maybe 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard a lot about it, and I've seen pictures of it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I absolutely love the name of the dragon in this movie. It's one of the best dragon names I've ever heard. Vermithrax Pejorative.
Vermithrax,
So you could tell that the screenwriter was very impressed with himself with that one, because he's like going through all these books of Latin and just looking up stuff. Like, ooh, Vermithrax Pejorative, yeah. Now I say, that one's arguably kaiju because that is Damon's argument. He argues Vermithrax Pejorative is actually a kaiju because it is an unusual dragon. If you want to know how, tune in for that episode. All right. And now we come to the all-important, highly meme-tastic trademark of MIFV. Say it with me now. Shameless self-promotion.
No shit.
Yeah. All right, Neil. Age Before Beauty. What do you got?
Oh, wow, what I got? Oh.
Yes, I have your books on the shelf. Yeah, he's going over and reaching for them. All right.
Yeah, in case we do have a video version of this, I got my latest book release here, Kaiju Bites. It's available on Amazon, and that particular book collects all my short fiction that's been published in G-Fan and the Attack of the Kaiju anthology series. And plus, it also features one brand new story called Gilgamesh versus the UNS Deterrent. And the plot behind that is that the United Nations built a battleship for the sake of deterring kaiju from making landfall. And of course, the big question is who's going to be put in command? Well, one of the problems you have is they don't have any officers who can face a kaiju without freezing up and on a tear. So the United Nations decided the best person to put in charge of this ship is someone who actually has faced a kaiju who they know won't freeze up. And the only officer they can find is a Nigerian captain of a riverboat. He's the only person they can find who actually faced the kaiju and did not panic. And of course, you got the problem as well. Okay, he only ran a riverboat, only has a crew of 12, and you got a battleship that's basically the size of a small town as far as crew goes. You got the technological differences. It's like, well, is this a good idea or not? But the person who picked him, she argues that, well, if the officer freezes up, what's good is all his technical skill. So she's willing to take a chance on this, little gunboat commander, and so you can find out whether or not that was a good idea or not.
Yeah. And if you'd like to pick
you can
this,
find it on Amazon.com, very easy to find.
yeah, there's that. And for those who are on Monster Island, come to the Monster Island Kaiju Authors Fair, and you can get signed copies from Neil. I might be there too. Invitations were sent. Yeah, because Neil is doing what all good writers do, repackage and resell his old stuff.
Yep.
I'm guilty of it too.
Well, if you're not a G-fan reader, this would be all new material.
This is true. This is true. Got any upcoming projects that you might want to plug?
Myself or Return to Wynja here?
Yeah, what you got going on, Wynja?
Nothing really. I mean, just trying to, I guess, finish up shows that I got to finish, and not really much in terms of like what I'm working on or anything. But if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter and YouTube. On the name is Spyro EW, so SPYROEW. So you can find me there. And occasionally I'll do YouTube videos, but not very often. I recently did do a vocal sort of karaoke cover of Wherever You Will Go by The Calling. Love that song. And I did that through VR chat, as I play a lot of VR chat with my friends. And that's pretty much about it. So...
And you will be coming back for a lot of these Heisei movies. I already got you slotted in.
Yeah, I will.
I don't remember when the next one will be, but you're slotted. You are slotted. I think I have you, I want to say Mecha Godzilla and Space Godzilla. I think those are the next ones I have you down for.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Space Godzilla.
Yeah, what about Ghidorah? Am I on for Ghidorah?
I think that's going to be me and Danny DeManna, if I remember correctly.
Can you get me on?
We'll talk. We'll talk.
Okay.
All right. But anyway, for anyone who wants to hear me rattle off about my stuff again, well, listen to the credits, because you should always listen to the credits. And also check out my other podcast, Henshin Power V3, where three friends have 3 minutes to talk about tokusatsu. If you enjoyed either Henshin Men or the Power Trip, this is my follow-up to that. And we will be going over other tokusatsu superhero shows, and just Henshin superheroes in general. So transforming superheroes. We have a fairly broad definition of Henshin. And then check out my author website. Oh, I should mention that the gimmick with Henshin Power V3 is we only get 3 minutes to talk about each episode, which means we can go through about 5 to 10 per podcast episode. All right. And check out my author website, nathanjsmarchand.com, where you can learn about all of my writing and not just my podcasting. Check out, you learn about my books, including my new short story collection, The Worlds of Nathan Marchand Volume 2, Tales of the Lost and Lonely. And also check out the kaiju books I have on there. You can also take a look at the Rondo Award-nominated Giant Bug Cinema, where I wrote an essay on Monster from Green Hell because no one else wanted it. And I came in late. But giant wasps in Africa in the 1950s, I can do worse. I suppose. I also will write for Kaiju United. And I'm getting sucked into writing more for Wild Hunt Press. So be watching out on those. Whoa, somebody's hungry.
That's the second sound of Wild Hunt Press.
Wow. Was not expecting that today. Definitely not on my bingo card. And I'm also a member of the stable of actors for Scyther Podcast. You can hear me as my former very obnoxious roommate Rito on Power Rangers the audio drama. There are reasons why I know how to play this character. And of all people, Deadpool on X-Men the audio drama, which might be the most iconic cameo ever on that show, because I've only appeared on the show officially once. And I have somehow reached apparently the same levels as Ryan Reynolds for people as Deadpool. I don't understand.
Because you're able to act like you're always on like a lot of caffeine.
I'm pretty sure Deadpool is on much stronger drugs usually. And in the MCU, he's not allowed to talk about it. Anyway, and then you can also hear me as Johnny Storm, baby, on Avengers, the audio drama, whenever they cross over with the Fantastic Four. So there you go. All righty. It's been a blast, gentlemen. And boy, I'm really looking forward to getting to that Godzilla 1985 discussion. And I don't know if I'm going to hurt any feelings or not with that one. What I don't get is that there are fans who prefer it, and I don't understand why they prefer it. They say it's the pacing, but I'm like, the pacing is ruined in the 1985 version, so whatever on that.
I mean, the American scenes don't really add much to the movie itself. They're just kind of there. Yeah. And trying very hard to get you to buy Dr. Pepper. Yeah. As we will hash out in a handful of episodes. Jimmy, cue the credits. Thank you for listening to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast produced and hosted by Nate Marchand. Our executive producer is Damon Noyes. If you want to be heard on the show, we'd love to hear from you. So, email us at monsterislandfilmvault@gmail.com or leave comments on YouTube or Spotify. Check the show notes and monsterislandfilmvault.com for Linktree links to all of our socials, including our Facebook group and Discord server, The Markalite Lounge. Be sure to follow Jimmy from NASA and our other colorful characters on X/Twitter. Our logo was created by Rebecca Hudgens. Follow her on X/Twitter and Instagram at super_R_illustrations. Sound effects sourced from freesound.org and created by JP Gant. Our theme song is Wanderer on the Offensive, live edit by B33J, Sarax, Juan Madrano, and Nonsensical Lexus, which is a remix of Counterattack and The Open Way by Koatani from Shadow of the Colossus. Our music includes Ultraman Rap, Artist Unknown, and Chant My Name, a cover by Second Archive of the song by Masaki Endo, with additional tracks from the 4Kids dub of Ultraman Tiga. All film and audio clips belong to their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended or implied. Visit our TeePublic store, the Monster Island Gift Shop, to purchase official MIFV merch. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and/or Podchaser to spread the word about the show. You can even support us by joining MIFV Max on Patreon. MIFV is a Moonlighting Ninjas media production and a proud member of Pod Nation and the Culture Box Network. Sayonara!